right, it's 6 o'clock. We'll just call this meeting to order, and kind of different setting for this town hall community meeting to give y'all some time to discuss some things we have and some new stuff that we've got going on. There's different people sitting up here, not all council members. Of course, I'm J.D. Stallion. I'm the mayor of the city of Thomaston. We'll just go over here. We'll let everybody sitting up here introduce themselves, so you'll know who's up here.
I'm Oasis Nichols, the Deputy City Clerk.
I'm Don Greathouse. I represent District 4, City of Thomaston.
I'm Taylor Smith. I'm the Economic Development Coordinator for City of Thomaston.
Russell Thompson, I'm the City Manager.
Bobby Ellington, City of Thomaston Building Official, Code Enforcement.
Doug Head, Mayor Pro Tem.
Brett Haynes, I'm the contracted provider that does building inspections, plan review, everything like that for the City of Thomaston.
And I think we have a sign-in sheet that we'd like for everybody to sign in. It should be floating around.
Another one up here.
Okay. And I'll just turn this over to Russell kind of to head out.
Thank you. Well, thank everybody for coming. This is going to be more of an informal meeting, town hall session, interactive. Please feel free to comment, ask questions, interject. We do have an agenda for tonight, but I want, if there are questions from the audience, this is an opportunity to ask those questions so that we leave and everybody has a clear understanding. So one of the things that we've been trying to tackle is one, property maintenance. With property maintenance and compliance with our code of ordinances, we have permitting, plan review, building inspection, a lot of speculation on what we allow, what we require, what we look for. So what I've asked Bobby and Brett, I think they have some informational handout. So for any property owners who may have questions, we hope that they can be addressed tonight, and we hope that we can provide you with the information that you need. We personally invited a lot of the people who have large footprints of housing stock within the city of Thomaston. And we did that specifically not in a derogatory sense or an accusatory sense, but you do have a large footprint within Thomaston, so we're hoping that you can be part of the catalyst to help us develop a plan to ultimately make our communities look better, cleaner, and safer. Also, this is a public open meeting, so anybody who has interest in property maintenance or code enforcement or the building permitting process, we invited them to come. So like I said, very informal. We'll just ask if you do want to speak or ask a question, raise your hand, be recognized from the mayor, and then for the benefit of those joining us digitally, we'll ask that if you just come up front so that you can be seen on the camera and we can pick up the questions that you ask. So with that, I'm going to read off the agenda and we're going to start. I've got general permitting process, plan review, and building inspection. So with that, I'm going to defer to Bobby and Brett for anybody who's wanting to build something or do a repair, general process. Brett, you want to kind of tee it off? Sure. From initiation, plan review, permitting, and just kind of walk them through the process.
So all of you know, of course, Bobby Ellington up here. Bobby and John, of course, our thoughts are with John. Bobby still handles the permitting process. The permits are available online. You can also print them out, bring them in. In order to issue them, you do have to come see Mr. Bobby, and he can get you set up with an appointment and get you taken care of. Once that's done, we've tried to create a little bit better process just for scheduling inspections. We do have it listed on the city's website now. My company, we handle the inspections, plan review, and we always pride ourselves on doing next day inspections so long as you request it by 4. Myself or one of my team members is out there next business day to do that inspection for you. We also handle plan review. City of Thomaston contracts with my company, Charles Abbott Associates. From a state perspective, legally, the City of Thomaston has 30 days to turn around a plan review, and I'm sure you've all heard horror stories of governments giving you 2 items on that 30th day and then saying, no, you got to resubmit. we are contractually obligated, we complete residential plan reviews in 5 business days, and commercial plan reviews in 10 business days maximum. And then any resubmittal, we have 5 business days. Most of the time, we generally only take a couple days, and we do that just to make sure that we're staying business friendly. We want to see Thomaston grow, we want to make sure it's done right, but we also want to make sure that we keep that small town feel as well, and make sure that we make ourselves available and just provide the best service possible. From a permitting standpoint, it's pretty much the same as many other communities. You come in with a completed application. Mr. Bobby will take business license information, state contractor's license information, put it on the permit, and then after that, the permit's issued. We'll take a scope of work, find out exactly what you're going to do. I know there are a few things at City of Thomaston, we are kind of limited from a state perspective as well. There is a state law. Of course, any mechanical, electrical, or plumbing work has to be done by a state licensed contractor. It cannot be done by a landlord. It has to be done by a state licensed contractor. The only caveat to that is if you personally own and occupy that structure, then you can do that work. And from a building standpoint, it follows the same lines, but there are a few different items: roofing, siding. There are a few other specialty trades the state of Georgia has listed where you do not have to have a state license to do that. You just have a business license. And that's something that Bobby would be able to issue the permit for without us having to check for a state license requirement.
Brett, could you elaborate on that? Because one of the biggest questions that I've gotten and I get lately is for people who own property is whether or not they can pull permits to work on their structure. And my understanding is that provided the scope of the work is less than $2,500 and not tied to one of the specific trades outlined in the state law, then they can pull their own permits and do that work. Is that correct?
That is correct. The state does have a residential threshold of $2,500. That includes material and labor. And that is not limited to things like roof. Obviously, if you can replace a roof for $2,500, you're doing pretty well nowadays. But roofing is exempt from that. Same thing with siding. But say you do have some structural work that does need to be done. You need to replace a couple 4x4 columns or something like that of that nature, just because they're rotted out or something. So long as the total cost, material and labor, is under that $2,500, you are allowed to obtain that permit, because a state license is not required in that case. You would still need to have your business license. Business license, generally, I'm sure Mr. Bobby can expand on that in terms of what the license will actually state. It kind of differs from community to community, but state license in that case would not be required.
And what he's talking about for is the license, our categories, we call it occupational tax. It falls under the handyman status, and it's based on the number of employees. 0 to 1 is usually around $50 per year, and they run from January 1st to December 31st.
Does anybody have any questions on that? Because that's probably one of the biggest questions I get.
The state law is not.
I'll be glad to ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, what we're saying here is,
Jared,
you need me to come?
yeah, if you don't mind.
Do I need to stand up or should I?
No, whatever you, just as long as the camera.
I would say my question, I'm gonna stand right here just so I can address
That's
it.
There'll be an X right there.
I can stand on that. My questions would, all right, so based off of what you're saying, I just wanna make sure I understand what you're saying. So, basically what you're saying, any project over $2,500, we have to actually hire, and I own property in town, so we have to hire out a general contractor, electrician, plumber, whatever that is, to perform whatever work we have, to pull that permit, is that correct?
Correct. If it falls under now just replacing, again, like.
So is there a list of
siding,
what falls under what, somewhere?
There is a list. It's a state list, and they call it specialty trades, and that's something that we can make available at the permitting office, and I'm sure we could even have it get put on the website as well. But carpentry, siding, roofing, a lot of things like that.
Right.
No
Can you
state
give me an
license.
example of what would be required as opposed to what wouldn't be?
Okay. You're gonna remodel a bathroom. And when I say remodel, I don't just mean change the toilet out. I mean,
Right.
you're gonna rearrange the pipes.
Okay.
You'd need a plumber, a state
Alright.
licensed plumber to obtain that permit.
Okay, so this is, and again, I'm speaking only for myself. I know a lot of the people out here, and just by living in town and knowing the people that are here, you got at least 500 houses here. All right, do we even have enough plumbers that if we needed permits pulled to remodel a bathroom in 50 of these houses at a time? I mean, what do we do when there's nobody to do that work? That work, do we allow it just to leak instead? Or do we allow, the problem,
Well, now, a
rotten pole,
repair,
you know what I mean?
a repair, I would
Okay,
necessarily
so-
say needs a permit. If you're
Right,
just,
okay.
say
If
you're
we-
fixing a leak, I
Sure,
recommend
sure.
you go ahead and do that.
All right, so if in the process of fixing a leak, we want to upgrade the bathroom, because we may can fix a leak for $50, when Home Depot these days, you can't fix it for $50. But the point is, you can fix the leak, or, you might want to upgrade the property. Instead of spending the amount of money, you're gonna say, let's say you've got a leak and it rots out the floor, the subfloor, you gotta tear that up, because your tenant don't let you know now. You find this out
Right.
way down the road.
Only after they.
So
collect
you've
all
got,
the water.
only after they hit the dirt, because their leg falls through or the toilet falls in. So we're gonna go in and make these repairs, but, at that point, you may think, well, I can spend, $500 to $800 to repair this, or I can spend $2,500 and just upgrade the whole bathroom. And so at that point, or we'll say $3,000, whatever it is. I mean, this is assuming the honesty that everybody, you know what I mean? So
Right.
at that point, we would be prevented from doing that unless we went through a licensed plumber to do that.
All depends on your scope of work. So when I say remodel, if you want to take out a prefab tub, if you
Right.
want to take out a toilet, if you want to take out an entire lavatory, you're gonna upgrade everything in there.
Right.
All the plumbing is existing.
Mm-hmm.
So you can still repair the leak, the plumbing's still existing, you can go in and remodel the entire
Right.
thing. The second you reroute
Okay.
the pipes, that's when we
So
initiate the requirement.
if we don't reroute it, because here's another problem is a lot of these properties in this town are extremely old. So you're gonna have to replace the pipe. I mean, it's galvanized, whatever, likely all the way back to the water meter.
Cast iron.
So again, as long as we lay it in the same place, then that wouldn't qualify as moving it. Am I accurate in saying that?
I would say if you were replacing the pipe, you're gonna need to get a plumber involved at that point.
Okay.
If
Okay.
you keep the fixtures, the actual fixtures, the toilet, the shower, the lavatory sink, if you keep all those in the same place, you just make a simple repair, then there wouldn't be anything for us to even look at other than making sure you seal the plumbing fixtures to the
Okay,
floor.
right.
But if you
My concern
replace
with that is, and I've got friends that are plumbers.
Mhm.
I mean, you half the time can't get them to answer the phone, much less you know what I mean, schedule an actual job for you. Because of the small town we're in and a lot of work that's going on right now. So in a situation where we have a tenant living in a property that's at this point now semi-unusable, probably unsafe, no telling the additional damages also doing to the house. So we who work on this all the time, we know how to fix it, but because it's not covered under what's, allowed, we have to get in touch with the plumber. We can't find a plumber that can come fix this. I mean, I would be blown away if we can get a plumber on the phone that says, yeah, I'll come fix it right now, but you'd be lucky to have somebody come fix it in 2 weeks. So in that amount of time, what should we do with our tenant while we're waiting on a licensed plumber to now take our job that we need them to do? You see what I mean? So, and the biggest issue with that is, that's just me with, say, one house. Imagine we have 50 at a time.
Right.
I mean, now we're in a predicament to where, well, now what do we do? Because you want to follow the guidelines that are set by, that are set up for this, but, I mean, to an extent, those are unrealistic when it comes to a larger quantity. And you got to think, I mean, some of these plumbing issues they're immediate issues. Yes, you can go in and patch it, but that's not very, I mean, for most people who own the property, I mean, that's almost throwing money out the window to patch a problem as you know is gonna either come right back or whatever it is. But
Right.
nevertheless, the point is, you know, in this interim time, because we don't have contractors or we don't have, you know, licensed plumbers and electricians, all this just standing by. So in that meantime, what do we do with our tenants? You know, when they're, like I said, they're probably not letting you know ahead of time, so
Right.
no telling what the damage is by the time you actually get in there. But at that point, when they do let you know, it's probably because literally we need somebody to come over here at this moment, you know. So at that point, I mean, we definitely can't say, well, we got to call a licensed plumber, so hang tight, you know, and I'll let you know. You know, so the point is, in situation, now if it's some kind of a new construction or something to that effect, that's one thing. But like I said, with some of the houses that we deal with, I mean, you've got pipes that are, I mean, I've got 2 houses on West Gordon I'm working on right now. Those houses were built in 1920. You don't use any of the plumbing.
Right.
You don't use any plumbing, because I mean, that's gonna be a problem for somebody at some point. So, you know, now if it's a house that's vacant, then maybe that's a different story, because then you just have to, hey, that's part of the process, you know, you gotta wait on, you know, the electrician to come, or you gotta wait on the plumber, whatever it is. Not that that makes me agree with it, but I'm saying, at least that's feasible in a real world perspective. But if you've got tenants in these properties, that's when I'm afraid there's gonna be like a major conflict between, you know, waiting on a permit, a licensed person to come take care of that, then that be inspected. I mean, you got people living in these houses during this time.
Right.
So, and again, I only own property in Thomaston, so I don't know how other counties do it or how that works in other counties. And, you know, I've got full-time guys that have been plumbers their whole life or have been whatever that usually work for me. So, I mean, just go fix it, you know, and we move on. But if we move to a process like this, you know, what do we do with that? And that's just strictly that perspective. That's not even touching a financial perspective.
For clarification, it's not a new process. It's actually codified in state law.
Okay.
So the administrative complexity that we have is, do we now permit work that is in violation of state law?
Okay.
So until the city council says, we want you to ignore the state law,
Right.
then we're going to be bound to the state law.
Well, there's even a subsection in that state law that says that any building department found to be violating that state law will have its right as a building department revoked by the state. So we definitely don't want to get to that point.
Right. And all the state law, all these things make sense. My question is, this is where a lot of the laws are made.
Not
And
this-
none of the folks are calling y'all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're calling us. And it might be 2 o'clock in the morning.
They're calling us too.
Yeah, well, they're gonna really call y'all when we don't go fix the stuff, and you know, you got probably that'd be a real disaster then. If, you know, but the point is, so if we move this route, what do we do now? You know, I mean, because I don't think, again, in a situation where you've got a semi-emergency, I mean, depending on, it's a lot more of an emergency to the person living there than it is anybody else, but at that point, you know, what do you say? Oh, I gotta get a permit.
Here's my recommendation for this. I'm going to break it up into 2 parts. The first thing is, if you have a tenant in a house where you have an immediate plumbing leak, go ahead and make the repair. You said you have gentlemen that have been plumbers.
Sure,
Now,
sure.
if they've been plumbers for years, it should be very easy for them to go over to Macon, take the test, and get their license.
Right.
But that being said, go ahead and make the repair, because the last thing we want is for the tenant to come up here and see Mr. Bobby or go on Facebook, anything like that, and say, so-and-so, I don't have water or my sewer doesn't work.
Sure.
Go ahead and make the repair to make it habitable.
Right.
So that's the first part. After that, once the repair has been made, go ahead and contact a licensed plumber, come in, take a look, have them pull the permit and everything, because I'd be willing to bet, just from an insurance perspective, if it was found, are you a licensed plumber? Are you a journeyman or a master plumber?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
No, I'm not. Oh, no, sorry.
So from an insurance perspective, heaven forbid anything happen, we have to come back and say, well, no, so-and-so is not a journeyman, they're not a licensed plumber or something. We don't want that to come back on you at that point, so that's covering you. At least at that point, your tenant has functioning water, functioning sewer, and we can still get a plumber to come in, pull a permit, we'll go out there, check it, sign off, everything's good. So that's the first part. Go ahead and make the repair. We don't want anyone without sewer, we don't want anyone without water. Make sure the structure is habitable.
Okay.
The second part is, if it is something where you are gonna go ahead and remodel, At that point, the tenant's gonna be without that bathroom for an extended period of time anyway, go ahead and get the plumber involved.
Okay.
And that's how I would view that situation.
And every other situation, whether it be electrical, whether it be
Correct.
structural, whatever it
Structural,
is.
if there are structural changes, I mean, most cases, bathroom remodels, you're not even gonna need a building permit. You're just gonna rearrange the fixture or something like that.
Right.
Building permit wouldn't even be necessary. You might need electrical and plumbing.
Okay.
But at
So-
that point, your tenant still has access to the water, still has access to the sewer. It's repaired, you're good. Get a plumber to come in afterwards. We can go out, take a look. That way, everything's fine and dandy from an insurance and from a code perspective. And your tenant's still happy. But if in the meantime you do decide to go ahead and remodel, they're gonna be without it for an extended period of time, go ahead and get the plumber to get the permit.
Okay. So the solution would be to fix any immediate issue, whichever way you can, and then at that point, go back in and,
Correct. The last thing we want is someone being in a structure, because obviously they are gonna come to you. They're gonna
Sure.
go to social media, they're gonna blast everyone.
yeah.
Go ahead and take care of them, and then we can come back in after the fact. Emergencies are always gonna take precedence, whether it be wiring, whether it be plumbing, whether it be HVAC or something, hot summers, cold winters, anything like that. Go ahead and take care of them in an
Right.
emergency situation, and we can come in after the fact and just check it off the note.
Okay. And so, in addition to that, you guys are gonna provide, a list, like a detailed list as to what we would need, what would constitute, like what you just did with plumbing. If you're gonna move or replace a pipe, that would constitute getting a permit for a licensed plumber. Same way with electrical, same way with structural, whatever that is.
That's
You know.
definitely something I can have not only made available here at the office, but also I'll work with Russell and make sure we can get it posted on the website as well, so it's available.
Okay. The only other concern I would have with that is obviously that's probably an extensive increase in cost, which is gonna have to be passed along, at least to an extent, to the people that we're renting these properties to. So now, as opposed to making a repair that would cost $1,500, you may very likely spend $3,500 on a licensed person who's also paying for insurance, whatever it is. So at some point, because the business has to be profitable or nobody would do it. So at some point, that has to be passed along. And when that is there, other than, sorry, that's the way it is, or is that the answer to that? When we do pass that along, is that hey, sorry, the rent is more, rent has gone up, sorry, it's, with the new coding and the new inspection process, we're having to pay these specific people to do these things. That just cost us more money, so there's no other way to do that, but to raise that rent. So, is there, I'm not trying to be smart by any means, I'm asking you, in your other experience, how does that, how does that look? What does that, I know what, obviously my renter, everybody's gonna complain, but the point is there a way that you've seen in the past that transition to adjust for those major financial differences? So
The only thing that I've seen in the past, it generally wasn't necessarily for renters. Obviously, when repairs come, you have to get a licensed party involved. You are correct, that does increase your overhead cost.
right,
And then obviously both businesses still have to make a profit. But the only thing that I've seen in the past was some communities that I've worked for. I've been in about 21 now in the state of Georgia. Some communities from time to time will have certain grants that they might make available to property owners to
Okay.
improve real property.
sure.
And obviously that's
That
affordable
sounds like
housing
an
is-
excellent idea. Is that something that possibly our community here would be willing to do, or at least look into? Because I 100% agree.
Repeat that, Brett.
There have been communities that I've worked in that will create, or not create, but there are grants that are made available after applying through different avenues, through whether it be DCA or other things, CHIP grants and things of that nature, where landlords and property owners are given access to funds to improve real property.
In my experience with HUD money from CHIP, that money is typically relegated for persons who are low to moderate income.
And it is generally owner
And
as
that's
well.
based on HUD publicized data.
And so the grants you would be speaking are go through HUD, and they do go through HUD. That's correct.
That also opens you up to an entirely different inspection process as well. That you're
Right.
not only, you're not just dealing with inspections from my standpoint, from a permitted process, inspections from Mr. Bobby from a utility. for rent inspection or anything, you're opening yourself up to the HUD inspections as well.
So that also puts you, so that's what I did when I was in Louisiana. I worked with HUD, and we had a rental rehab program, essentially is what you're talking about. So that you go into the HUD guidelines and your CDBG qualifications, you have to do income qualifications. They have minimum standards for the property, minimum standards as far as the quality of the property.
To apply.
Yes,
Okay.
to the property. There's mandatory, basically affordability periods that you get into based on the amount of grant funds you were to receive. That property would have to stay at a certain rent level for X amount of years. While,
Right.
yes, free money in a sense, that opens up a can of worms, a huge caveat of,
Sure.
of legal requirements that the federal government puts on that money.
I have two more questions, and then I'll last. One is, why am I allowed to do these projects if I live in the property as a property owner? But I can't if I'm the property owner and I don't live in the property. What, does my intelligence level go down? You know what I mean? There's no difference in my ability based off of where the property is.
You have to ask
So-
the General Assembly.
Okay, so that is a state of Georgia.
Yeah,
Right.
it's OCGA 434117H. And that's what is codified in the official code of Georgia annotated, where it states that the licensing requirements shall not apply to an owner and occupier of a structure that will live there for a period not less than 24 months after project completion. So unless you sign an affidavit and personally state you're gonna live in 17 different homes for
Right.
24 months, obviously you do not want the state of Georgia coming at you.
Of course, yeah, sure.
Now, from a knowledge perspective, a lot of people know how to do it. Plumbing is one thing that I won't touch, but I do framing and
Sure.
and electrical in my own home. But at the same time, I am not licensed.
Right.
So that would protect your tenants. It also protects you as well. Once you get a state license, any state licensed individuals in here know you not only have to have workers' comp, you also have to have strict liability insurance. Otherwise, the state will waive your state license.
Right.
So that protects you, the tenant, and that's also, again, that's also codified in OCGA. It's
Sure.
not a city of Thomaston
Okay.
requirement.
Fair enough, fair
And
enough.
I will let you know, Jared, if you were interested in applying for grant funds out there, you could apply to become a CHODO. So it's a Certified Housing Development Organization. It's essentially a nonprofit organization that focuses on providing affordable housing opportunities. With that being established, you could apply for these state and federal grants to make improvements to your properties. But again, once you start applying CDBG funds, any kind of HUD funds to that, you're going to be under their federal requirements and their federal guidelines, and you have to follow them
Right.
to a T. You don't want the state coming on you. You don't want the feds coming on you.
I mean, and that kind of leads to my final point is, let's say we have, because we're all about, I mean, and we, even in the council meeting last night, I watched, when you're talking about the alcohol thing, if we go to a point where you're getting points for repairing a dilapidated building or whatever. So that almost puts us at, that there's no reason for us to get to buy that dilapidated house and try to repair it if we've got to pay a licensed plumber to come in and do the work, licensed electrician to come in and do the work, a general contractor to come in and do the rest of the work. At this point, we've got a house that's probably worth 20 grand. We've got to put 60 into it. That's bare. That's assuming it's probably a 1,000 square foot house. And then we rent that house out for $650 a month. Doesn't take, a mathematician to realize you got a long time before you're getting your money back on that house. Only on top of that, you've got the risk that you're acquiring during this time. So what I'm afraid that leaves is a bunch of dilapidated houses around here. I mean, who's going to pay? I mean, yeah, you can go after the property owner if they're still alive, or go after the kid, whoever, whatever it is, however you find them, whatever. Eventually, what it comes back to is city, county, whoever it is, assuming the cost to do the legal work on that house, have to demolish that house, and now, you've got a piece of property that the city owns that they don't want. So, again, that's still, it's almost like a circle that we're going to get into if it's not at least somewhat reasonable, and I get, it all comes back to, well, we can't tell the state of Georgia we're not going to do it.
No,
I get that. But
It 100% comes down to health and safety, because obviously some people do a better job than others.
Sure.
We've inspected properties where people try to do their own work, and we got brand new wiring all the way up to where the ceiling is.
Right.
We go up in the ceiling, and it's wire and tube knob.
and I'm assuming that doesn't pass inspection.
It doesn't, but what we run into is if we don't have some standard of work qualified by a specific trade or skill set, it's almost like we acquiesce to subpar work. Not saying you would do
Sure, I
that,
understand.
but a cross segment of different individuals, at
Right.
least there's some standard that's measurable by a state standard for that licensed individual when it comes to health
And I'm
safety.
assuming now any problems fall back on that. So it's
Yes.
almost like, so now when something happens, we just have somebody to blame. But, I mean, the licensed contract, I mean, that's who we would blame. We paid those licensed people, this, hey, what, you know, this falls on you. So I understand that. But again, my point is how unsafe, and I'm sure in the research y'all have done in other towns, I mean, vacant homes are extremely unsafe. Vacant, dilapidated homes, I mean, insurance won't cover them, you know what I mean? So, and you've got a collection of people, I mean, look at just the city bathrooms that we don't want, look what that looks like. You know what I mean? Imagine homes sitting somewhere. So at that point, there's no advantage to take that home and spend just crazy money to fix it up. So now, I mean, is there a solution to that? Is there, well, this home just gets to sit there. You guys better keep paying the taxes on it, you better keep cutting the grass on it.
That's item 5.
Yeah, well, I didn't mean to jump to item 5. I'm not gonna get back up here on item 5. I'm just, you know what I'm saying. So my point is, I mean, there's gotta be some solution here. Because I don't think, I mean, again, I'm speaking for me, but I'm not paying $25,000 for a house that I gotta put $75,000 into that I can rent for $500 a month. That, by the way, is going to be destroyed more than likely at some point, the amount of money I just put into it by the renters that, you know, are revolving in and out or whatever it is. So at that point, that leaves somebody, whether it's me paying taxes on a property that I can't do anything with, having to keep the maintenance and the grass cut on something I can't do anything with. By the way, getting fined because the property is vacant that I can't do anything with. My only choice at that point is try to sell it. Nobody wants to buy the property because they're in the same boat I am, can't do anything with it. So now I can not pay my taxes on that property. It's the only way I can get rid of it, by getting the FIFA and all these things attached to me, by letting it go back at a tax sale. Nobody buys it at the tax sale. Where it goes from that point, I'm assuming to y'all. I mean, I don't know, but you still got a house sitting there.
Can I ask
that's
how
rotted
many
to the ground.
houses you have?
I have about 40 houses.
Okay, and that's your business? And-
No, that's not I'm actually a software developer, so.
Okay,
It's
so
just this fun
you
side
just do
job
it
I
on
have.
the side?
Yeah, I do it on the
That's
side.
interesting.
So,
Because, you know, you get everything that you do on that house, even acquiring it, you know, you get tax benefits from it.
sure,
The homeowners don't, but.
Right. Well, I mean, you get tax benefits, but I mean, it's still money, it's cash money
How
that
do
you're
you
spending.
how do you vet your tenants?
Honestly, in my opinion, the best way I vet them is Facebook. Because
Really?
whatever they do on Facebook, they're gonna do in your house.
Wow,
That's the way I look at mine.
Wow.
wow.
Do you have
Because I'll
to
tell you
vet-
this, if I ran a credit check on them, I wouldn't be able to give anybody a house. So,
Wow, no wonder we got some of the renters we got.
but,
As a homeowner, you know, living next to, you know, a rental house.
Right.
We want we want
Sure.
good neighbors. We don't want.
and the thing is, I mean, you can't, I mean, again, there's even a point where we can't even evict the people when they do something that they ought not be doing or whatever.
You've had that moratorium for COVID?
I actually, luckily, the people I evicted eventually moved out on their own. So I didn't have to go through, now I think a couple people I've talked to did have to go through magistrate, and I don't know how the COVID issue worked out. But so far, the renters that I've had, they went ahead and moved out on their own. Now, I don't know if you can imagine what it looked like when they did, but that's another $8,000 to $10,000 I had to put into the house, not paying a general
But it's a
contractor.
cost to doing business.
Oh, it is,
If you're
it
gonna-
is.
If you're gonna be.
And if we're gonna pay extra for this cost, eventually you just won't do the business. And so then instead of having a renter, you're gonna have an empty house, which is gonna be a lot worse probably than a renter. Because I mean of the crime or whatever it is that comes with a vacant property.
How much are you putting into a house after a renter, you mentioned demolishes it?
Oh, it's
But
new
what-
cabinets all the way through.
No
Matter of fact,
permits required.
last night, just on the city council meeting last night, what the bid you got for redoing the cabinets on the apartments?
8,000 per unit.
$8,000 per unit on cabinets.
Right. Give me a general list of things you, for instance, in cabinets, no permit required, no GC required. You want to
Okay.
do it yourself, do it yourself.
Right.
Give me a general list of things that you are replacing.
Yeah, you guys just say if you spend more than $2,500, I'm sorry, I interrupted, but y'all just say if y'all spending more than $2,500 in that house, but if that cabinet costing more than $2,500, then you don't need a permit.
If it's structural, if you're replacing floor joists, if you're replacing rafters, trusses, if you're replacing 4x4, 6x6 columns, and it exceeds $2,500, you need a general contractor. Otherwise, you can pull that permit yourself. But if it's something, cabinets, paint, flooring, sheetrock, all of that, do yourself, no permits required.
So the $2,500.
What about roofing and siding?
Roofing and siding, if you're re-roofing a house, a permit is required.
It's not structural.
Well, we still require a permit for
Siding's
re-roofing.
not structural.
It's not structural, but I can tell you plenty of horror stories I have seen. Not saying that you would do that, not saying that other
Who's
people
more
would do that.
concerned about that roof leaking than the owner of that property? What do you come and inspect when you inspect that roof? I've paid you money for what?
For me to do the inspection,
I guess that's what you
make sure
say.
your shingle
For you to come
overhang matches
inspect
the
it.
manufacturer's
We've had roofs
requirement,
they
make
not
sure
even
you
come
have
out and
drainage, make
inspect,
sure
and we
you have
pay
proper
money.
flashing.
I'm sorry.
Make sure you have proper flashing, make sure your shingle overhang matches the manufacturer's
Don't you think
requirement.
if I'm the owner of that house, I want that? Don't you think I'm gonna do that? Don't you think if I hire a contractor to do it, if I don't do it myself, don't you think I'm gonna see that he does it the way I want it done?
And that may be the case for
So
you,
why
but
am
I
I
can't
paying
tell you
y'all?
that for everyone. I can tell you that there are contractors even in this area that have been doing it for many years. They're not even following the manufacturer's requirements.
So
But why am I paying y'all?
here's my
For a
question
permit?
that goes along with what he's saying. There's no one out here that benefits and that's more into that house than the people that own it. That's who it matters the most to. We own properties. The properties are ours.
Right.
So here's my question. So rather than requiring us to go get general contractor for this or electrician for this or whatever it is, and then you come behind those people and do your same inspection. Because like you said, if there's a problem, now we've just got to turn around and go back to that general contractor, whoever we paid, to come back and fix whatever you didn't approve. Why not enhance your inspection process? And when we do it wrong, you come in and you fail that inspection. So now when we do it wrong, so if that's what that comes to, I guess, what are we here for tonight? Just for you to tell us that, I guess? I mean, I didn't know, that's what I was
Need
curious
to
about.
understand the process.
Okay, so
Because
basically,
when we send code enforcement around, we want everybody to know what's coming.
okay.
What about windows?
What about?
Again, it goes back to a detailed list of exactly what all is covered.
Under 2,500, can I replace my own windows?
Nearly every community I've ever worked in does not require a permit to replace like-for-like windows.
But it's not a community thing, it's a state thing, right?
No. That is something, where, again, to replace windows, if you are not doing anything structural, no state license would be required. Structural
Okay.
would be if you're changing the size of the
Would
opening.
structural be if the window has rotted for 10 years because your tenant didn't let you know and now the windowsill's rotted out and the 2x4s under the windowsill rotted out, so now we gotta replace those too.
That is structural.
Okay.
And if you get a quote
And that's
of
not a- and that's
$2,500 to replace two 2x4s, I'd recommend you get a new supplier.
Right, and that's a state thing.
Back to the $2,500 rule, that is a state requirement. That is not City of Thomaston.
Okay, so what part does City of Thomaston play other than just, following and passing along the state law? Are there any, like for instance, there are state laws that local communities can, veer off of those laws and say, okay, well, here's the umbrella of the state law. Under that, we're gonna allow this, this, this. Alcohol is one of them. But the point is, so at that point, what does our community have the ability to veer off of from that state law?
So my understanding is that by local regulation, we can make it more stringent.
And that's it.
We can't make it more lenient. And we have adopted by reference the ICC, the building code, plumbing code, fire code, mechanical code, property maintenance code, etc. So whatever the state adopts that they run through the Department of Community Affairs, we adopt that by reference every time there's a publication.
Okay, so now essentially the city's job is just to enforce whatever
State
it is.
law.
Yeah, enforce the state law. All right, so again, that would have to leave, because I mean, this is just questions that we're thinking about on the fly. You would be surprised what we run into every day, and I own probably the minimum amount of houses out of most people here. So, you know, that surely there's some specific list, because you see the questions, you know, what if I replace my own windows? Well, that's fine, unless some of it's rotten out and you gotta replace, and now that's considered structural, you know, or what if, you know, when it comes to the roof, or whatever it is. So, I mean, if you're gonna leave that on as a judgment call to us, I think you know how that's gonna go. So, you know.
Well, I mean, you mentioned the 2x4s underneath the window.
Right.
You and I both know the 2x4s underneath the window are not structural.
Right.
You have a header above,
So-
those 2x4s don't support anything other than the sill,
Other than the
which has
window.
no load.
Right, so that's not structural then?
Correct.
Okay, okay. I thought you said it was, that's the reason I was asking.
No,
But either way.
structural would be when you increase the size of the opening, because now you have to modify the header.
Okay, so if I put a larger window in or
You
something to
put a
that.
larger window in, you change it to a
Okay.
bay window or something.
And
like
at that point, I could just get a contractor for that specific part
Correct.
and just still put my own window.
You want to replace sheetrock, you want to replace two 36-inch 2x4s that are only supporting a windowsill,
Right?
go right ahead. There
And
would
the
be
person-
nothing for me to inspect.
And your company is who's inspecting all of these permits that we get and coming in and out. Okay. So what happens if, and again, I'm just asking, I'm trying to plan ahead for a problem, but what happens if we tear that window out and we go down to Home Depot and they don't have a 32-inch window anymore, the only one they have is a 36, I got a hole in the wall, or I'm about to have a hole in the wall, and I go back to that 36-inch window, and I'm like, my God, I don't have time to call a building inspector, I don't have time to, you know, call a contractor now, I'm just gonna put this window in, then you come inspect it, and you're like, this was supposed to be a 32-inch window, I stuck a 36-inch window, so therefore I did have to adjust the framing. What happens to me at that point?
Or at that point, you'd be in violation of city ordinance for doing work without a permit.
And what would happen to me because of that?
Bobby, violation of city ordinance?
Citation could be issued, or just double the fee on the permit, get you to get a permit.
Okay.
I mean, again, replacing one window, replacing a header, you're still gonna be under the $2,500 threshold.
Okay. So I guess, like I said, then that comes back to you'll provide some list, what is, number one, outside of the, what is not, you know, something that we should be covering
And
under
there-
that
there are
2,500.
specialty
Like you
trades
said,
that
if
are
it's
exempted,
10,000
I
in
can-
cabinets, that doesn't,
Right.
that's not in 2,500. That's, do your own thing and, okay. Okay.
You wanna upgrade the vanity, you want a nicer vanity, go right ahead. You're using the existing.
Unless
one.
you put a double vanity in, then you gotta change the plumbing, so.
Right.
But either way, yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, so. I'm gonna go sit. You might would rather me stand up there, but.
I'm waiting on you to get through.
Thank y'all.
Because I apologize for blurting that one.
That's what we're here for.
My question though is, back to the roofing. The state don't require, right,
The state does not require what?
a permit?
You don't have to be a licensed
You
contractor,
don't have
my
to be a licensed
understanding.
contractor.
So it's the city made the decision to
Do we
have to have a permit.
We
for a
permit
roof.
and inspect roofs, yes.
Why? For a homeowner?
Because there are a lot of homeowners who aren't as detail-oriented as you who own multiple properties. I've got the 60-year-old widow lady, you know, I've got the software engineer who's never held a hammer in his life, and they're beholden to a contractor that maybe they found on Facebook, and without some follow-up or inspection from the city, you can imagine, like you just alluded to, the roof is one of the most integral parts of protecting, you know, rot and the elements, and that if we don't ensure that structure, then we have other issues.
But you
So
have to
it's
realize-
not specifically for the contractor-minded person who's in the business of rehabbing and housing is their business. I have a lot of property owners out there that don't know anything about quality of work, overlap, you know, flashing, drip edge, tying in the gutters. I
We
mean,
just had one the other day that put a 7th layer of shingles on top.
So this permit is designed for a contractor.
you know, the permit is designed so that we can inspect that roof to make sure it's done right. We're not going to discriminate whether a contractor does it or whether you do it. If you put a roof on, we're going to inspect it.
Well, you're gonna have to realize, I'm coming from way back when it first we'd buy a permit for a roof and wouldn't need nobody to come by, you know, they wouldn't even come and look at it,
Yeah.
you know, so what have I spent that money for? I'm gonna see that roof's done right, so why am I giving you money?
Well, did you call for an inspection would be the first question, because we have a lot of roofers that'll come pull the permit, and I gotta go hunt them down.
Roofers,
Right.
not the homeowner,
So if you pulled a permit, did you call for an inspection?
but not the homeowner. I can understand you having a roofer have to get a permit to
If
go
you-
roof somebody's house.
If you pull a permit, though, we're gonna inspect the work to make sure the roof is right.
But the state don't require a permit for a roof.
We do, and I just
know
told you
that,
why.
that was my point.
Yeah.
That was my point. I don't feel like y'all should be, in one sense, punishing a landlord. You know, we can do our own inspection. We're not gonna let somebody, we want to take care of our property. And so that's my beef there, you know. And,
Some do, some don't.
and the same way with the siding.
Some do, some don't.
Do
Again,
what?
It's not going after anyone that
But
has
I
been
want-
in the business and knows what they're doing. It's to go after the ones that put a 7th layer of shingles on
Yeah,
it. It's to
if
go
I get in the
after-
business of only inspecting those that do a bad job, then I'm discriminating
I
against
cannot-
two different classes. So if I'm permitting it, I'm gonna inspect it. Whether you're Anthony that we know and he's gonna do a good job, or whether you're Bob that we don't know that's from out of town that just put a roof on.
They're storm chasers, like we call them. After a bad storm, they'll come in from all over the place.
Oh,
They'll do
yeah,
much harm to us.
I realize that. I realize that.
But you've got a business license, and it's your house, why could you not still allow us to put our roof on?
If roofing, you can,
But why are we having to pay you to come?
to make sure you did it in accordance with the current state code. I know you said you're aware of it. Do you know what the current state code is?
No, I didn't say that.
Well, it's our job to make sure the roof that you do meets that, so heaven forbid something happened, the insurance company comes asking us, yes, it did meet the 2018 International Residential Code, yes, it did have drip edge, yes, it did have flashing.
You can't do that when you don't come look at it.
But it's
You
not.
gotta call for the inspection.
But it's not a state.
You had,
Here's a
It's not
good
a
example.
state.
So if you own the property and you pull a permit and you put a roof on, the law just says you have to live there 2 years. Well, once you sell it to Taylor and Taylor's roof falls in, he's gonna come to the city and wanna know why I didn't inspect it. Not saying you're gonna sell it, but that's the way the process
We'll
works.
switch over to siding. Why a permit on siding?
Again, to make sure it's done right.
What can you do wrong?
You'd be shocked.
You haven't met my husband.
This is your house now. You gotta realize we own this property.
Oh, believe me, I completely understand. And
we're not-
I've worked with many
And we're not
landlords
gonna put
across
7
multiple
layers of
jurisdictions.
roofing that's gonna cave
But that
you
doesn't
half
speak
in.
for someone else that comes from
But
out
you're
of
talking
state.
to someone else. This is a group of,
But I can't require permits for someone I don't know and not require permits for someone that we do.
So
That is
let's
strictly
couch it this
discriminatory.
way. If you want legislative changes to what we inspect, that's the city council meeting. If you want to understand what we're looking for from an administrative standpoint in inspections, that's this meeting. You want to change the law, it's
so
these guys.
so my-
If you want to know what we're doing and what we're looking for, it's these guys.
So I'm picking to that as my last point, so that, I'm gonna bring this up. I had a big issue with having to change out fuse panels, perfectly good fuse panel. And there's nothing in the code that tells you that you can't have a fuse panel. But the city of Thomaston tells you, you gotta spend several $1,000s and change that perfectly good panel out before we're cut the power back on. I got some information from Bobby. Bobby gave me his interpretation of the code. But I've got interpretations completely different. You know, that on a new structure, yes, you can't use fuse panels. But for an existing building, there's no problem. But I gotta spend several $1,000s so I can get power on for my tenant. That kind of rubs me wrong, you know? And I guess that's where this, need to air these kind of things out, but I would have to go to change that, we'd have to go to the legislation session, right?
Well, the question about knob and tube wiring, my
Not
understanding.
knob and tube.
Okay.
Not-
panels.
I'm talking about
Fuse
fuse
panels,
panels
okay.
instead of breaker panels.
So are you upgrading the server?
I'm not doing anything to it. The fuse panel's fine. But before they turn the power on, I gotta put a breaker panel. I gotta rip that perfectly good panel out and put a breaker panel in. Because the city interprets the code this way. And the code plainly says, you know, in the existing, there's no problem. Now, I understand you can't put in a new one, but if it's already existing, it's good. But for me to keep my property rented, I gotta spend a few $1,000s to rip that perfectly good panel out because the city says you can't use it.
I don't know anything about fuse panels, so I'm gonna defer to our code.
Am I right?
Fuse panels are allowed by code.
But yet, he tells me I can't do it. And I spend several $1,000s because I don't have no option. You know, I gotta rent my property.
Well, we learned something. That's why we're having this conversation. We got any more questions right now, or we'll move on?
I'm gonna give it a break.
Well, I'm just curious, does that mean we can keep leaving fuse panels? Because all these old houses have fuse panels. So I mean, can we leave fuse panel or not?
So what's the interpretation?
They gotta be labeled, you gotta be grounded, and there's no knob and tube.
But then, other than that, the fuse panel, I mean, we don't have to change our.
If it's labeled and everything is grounded and meets the codes,
Why did I have to change that panel out over on the?
it wasn't labeled, it wasn't grounded.
No, you told, Bobby, don't you sit up there and tell him, boy. You said I told you that was a perfectly good panel. What's wrong with it? It's fused.
I've placed $100,000 worth doing that same thing.
Fuse panel?
Nothing wrong with them. Probably more than that.
I understand we got state law, you know, we got state, and that's what we're trying to be sure that we are aware.
That's the purpose of the meeting. We want
Right.
to work with you.
Right.
We want you to understand, you know, we're not here to hurt you. We want to be transparent.
Right.
But at the same time, you know, I got to have everybody working on the same set of rules. So if there's something different we need to put out, we can do that. And we want to work with you. We understand it's a business. You got to make money. But at the same time, we still got to follow the minimum state, you know, and I think, you know, even to that point, if you go to 4 different jurisdictions, you're going to find 4 different interpretations of the building code. That's just fact, but I think you heard it tonight.
Romania says it's legal.
Fuse panels, you know, if they're, and I'm not an electrician, I don't know the code, that's why I got the professionals here. That's something we need to work on, that's something we can work on.
You wasn't working with me when I tried to get power on.
Russell, when we get to a stopping point where we can't work on the house, do we call you?
Call a contractor.
Well, no, when we feel like we're in the good, when we feel like we're within the scope of work we're allowed to do, but we're made to stop, do we call you?
That you're made to stop?
If we have the question, if the inspection process feels like we're in excess of the $2,500, but we feel we're inside of it, do we call you for the discrepancies?
Yes, and we can work through that.
How many what is my time frame between $2,500 projects on a single structure?
Well, my advice there, I'm not a policeman or a law enforcement, but I wouldn't try to skirt a law.
I just want black and white. I'm gonna figure the gray.
It's ambiguous. There's no clear statement. But at the same time, it's something where if we go in, you're gonna I'm gonna replace these 8 4x4s here, and I'm gonna replace these floor joists, and then 2 months later, oh, you know, I just found these, we're gonna start to come into question. Now, we're gonna trust you, but obviously at some point, we're gonna have to wonder, okay, show me the material order where you ordered all this at 2 different times, or.
I have to prove my innocence. I don't agree with you on that now.
Well, okay, if you're not gonna prove your innocence, then, I mean, obviously, you're innocent until proven guilty. Thomaston is a MEAG provider. They do hold the they do hold the electric or something, and it's something where, again, we're trying to promote the health and safety of the occupants. Are you a licensed general contractor?
Not currently, no.
Not currently.
I'm a licensed utility contractor.
Utility contractor, okay, so you're aware that that's actually a specialty trade. Also, it's even listed as a state trade as well. So your workman's comp and liability insurance, does it cover you replacing floor joists?
For a utility manager,
Correct.
no,
Does it cover you replacing rafters in one of your homes?
no.
See, this is there to protect you. It's not there to be big government or anything like that. It's there to where you are protected by that contractor that must have workman's comp and liability.
I agree with something Jared said earlier. We don't have the infrastructure in Thomaston to where if we need a plumber, to where we can get on there in a reasonable amount of time.
Well, again, when it's an emergency, go ahead and take care of it. If it's an emergency, go ahead and take care of it and then come back after the fact and get that licensed individual to verify it. Otherwise, every single bit of liability falls on you.
Well, I have a utility license and a distribution license as well, so I'm essentially covered under most of it.
Right, unless it's structural. Or unless you're doing work that's covered in OCGA 4113 for a plumber or 4114 for an electrician or something. You do that, you're not only in violation of city ordinance, you're in violation of state law.
You know, not preaching to the choir, but Thomaston is riddled with substandard and dilapidated housing. And without some quantifiable standard, and we're just talking about the minimum standard, where can we expect that to extend? Like I said, I'm not talking to y'all, but we have that issue.
My question to that, Russell, is if it's not beneficial to us to standardize these substandard properties, what are they gonna be?
We will not accept less, we will not accept less than the minimum state standard.
And the minimum state standard is to pay contractors of each trade.
If it's required by law.
There are other aspects too, where say you own a house and from an international property maintenance code perspective, this gets more into code enforcement, but protective treatment, that's a fancy way of saying replace your rotting wood or something like that. If you replace rotting wood on a column, on a post or something, we're not gonna make you get a permit for that. If you replace the column itself, yeah, then we're getting structural. But again, siding, if you're replacing 8 boards or something, in my opinion, I wouldn't require a permit to replace 8 boards. But at the same time, if you leave them up there, you're in violation of the property maintenance code. You can't just have paint scrapings falling down or rotten siding or something like that. That's what the International Property Maintenance Code, it sets the minimum standard. Another minimum in there, like we talked about, is to repair emergencies. Every tenant has legal right of having running water. Every tenant has legal right of having working sewer, working furnace in the wintertime. Those are minimum standards. It's not saying that you have to have a new 3-ton train in your 1,000 square foot rental house or something like that. It is bare minimum standards for habitation.
Questions?
My question is, tell me if I misunderstood. Say if there's an emergency, any plumbing or electrician, any kind of problem, it needs to be fixed right away.
Make the repair.
Go ahead and make a repair. Afterward, come to the city and pull the permit. When the problem already fixed, why you come to the city?
Well, if the repair fixed it, you wouldn't need a permit.
Huh?
If we're talking about a complete rehab versus.
No, we were also saying like if a pipe breaks or something like that and it's not just a patch job, if you replace that pipe, then get a plumber to obtain a permit if you are not a licensed plumber.
Right, but tell me if I'm understood wrong. Say, go ahead and fix the problem because you don't want your tenant to be without electricity or without power or without water or without sewage, whatever the problem is. It needs to be fixed. So you went ahead and took care of it. And afterward, you come to the city and pull the permit and tell them, go, this is what I got it done, go see if we got it done right. When I fix the problem, why I would come to the city?
Again, it goes back to your liability.
I'm just trying to
Are you
clear.
gonna have over box fill in an electrical junction box that's gonna cause a fire. Well, you didn't pull a permit or consult a licensed electrician.
Just
now you're
like,
liable.
just like he say, whenever I'm gonna get it done to something to my property, I'm gonna make sure it's got done right, because I don't wanna destroy my property.
Right. And you're gonna make sure it's done right. How familiar are you with the state minimum codes that are adopted as state law?
I don't, but
So how do you know it's done right? And don't, it's not just something where you can say, I've been doing it for 20 years, we've been through 18 different electrical codes. How do you know for certain that it is done
The
right?
problem gonna occur in if the house is already there, it's already exists, everything is working, all of a sudden you have a problem in a certain area, and that area where the problem is, you either got your maintenance guy go over there and took care of it, the problem is fixed, and you cover it. Then why you come to the city and say, you know what, this is the problem, I was having this over the weekend and I got it fixed, now I want you to go over there and see if I got it done right.
To make sure your maintenance guy did it right. Is your maintenance, what schooling or what experience does your maintenance guy have?
I don't
They're a
have
handyman, right? They've done everything.
Right.
They've done building, mechanical, so why aren't they not
I
licensed?
guess my next question will be the same. The reason is like, y'all say the guy, whoever gonna do the job, gotta have a business license. The person I deal with, they don't do that for a living, but they know how to do it.
How?
What do you mean?
Did they take a contractor's exam?
I guess they've been working with a contractor
Or
for
did they
years and
watch
years.
YouTube? And we have to have a quantifiable way to verify that they know what they're doing.
I would
That's what I'm
assume that
saying.
quantifiable way would be you doing your inspection correctly to verify it. And then when it does not get passed, so if I go, let's say I watched a YouTube video to figure out how to roof a house. Or I learned how to splice wires by Googling it. If I go over there and I do it right, you come in and you inspect it, and you can't tell me, hey, you watched a YouTube video to figure out how to do that. It looks just as good as the dude you pay for $400 an hour to come do it. It sounds to me like this is taking a lot of burden off of the inspection, because the inspection should be able to go in and clearly say, hey, this isn't done right. So at that point, hey, if you got tenants in a house and it fails inspection, sorry landlord, your tenant's gotta go, and you gotta call, now that you failed this inspection, you've gotta call a licensed person in, they've gotta be signed, you gotta pay for the permit, signed off on, et cetera, et cetera. It sounds like we're doing this, it sounds like you're making us basically shift the burden to somebody else. That's just somebody else that didn't pass an exam. I mean, after dealing with the property, I could probably go pass the contractor's exam. So that means by no means I'm a general contractor. It just means I might have passed the exam. So matter of fact, I could be sitting next to a guy that does know all the answers, but still isn't a general contractor. I ain't let him take the test for me because it's all online now because of COVID. I'm all of a sudden a general contractor and I'll start doing all y'all's work for you. That doesn't mean that I know how to do it.
So
even you guys said at that point, it
is
sounds
the
like we're
argument
asking
that you
for
don't
this.
want to use licensed contractors when it's required by state law?
Well, the problem is,
If it's required by state law, you still don't want to do it. Is that the
Simple
argument?
stuff.
on stuff
You're
that's
saying you
not,
don't have to pull a
Grass and
permit.
blow it in the road, but y'all do it every week.
Do what now?
State law says you don't cut grass and blow it into the state highways and the city roads, but you do it every day. So I mean,
If the city council tells me not to enforce the state law on minimum building standards, we will not enforce it. Until they do that in a public meeting, we will enforce the minimum building standards set by the state of Georgia. Period.
And we have to enforce the state law that says contractors have to be licensed.
I just want to be sure on that, in other words, every time I like doing a repair, in other words,
I'm gonna do it.
something happened online, you're saying fix it, and then get a permit, but you don't have to get a permit unless it's over $2,500, correct?
If it's mechanical, electrical, plumbing, you need a permit regardless, unless it is just a replacement. If you replace, say I'm gonna go to that out right there.
A P-trap under a sink. If I had to replace that P-trap, water heater.
Pull a permit.
For a
No,
water heater?
water heater.
What are the current requirements for a water heater?
Disconnect.
unhook the one that's
Disconnect with an invisible site, correct, that's one. What's the sizing?
Vented if it's gas.
The state has specific sizing, drip leg if it's gas, shut off for the gas.
But a house has to be inspected.
Expansion tank has to be secured unless the manufacturer specification says otherwise. You have to have a labeled shut-off. You have to have a drain pan that's terminated to the exterior or have an auxiliary shut-off.
And it has to have a pop-off.
These houses have to be inspected every 2 years. In other words, if a tenant moves out every 2 years, they have to be inspected, correct?
That is
So
not
this brought it up
my,
to inspection.
the
and we
utility
replaced it.
inspections are not mine. I enforce the state minimum codes from a permitting standpoint. I do not do any utility inspections.
No, what I'm saying is the house has to be inspected. For another tenant to move in after 2 years, that house has to be inspected.
That's the city of Thomaston.
All right?
Yes.
So it's inspected, it's up to code. I mean, if we do all what has to be done to bring it up to code.
Again,
All
I
right, so
don't
we
do
have to
those, so I can't
replace
speak
that.
for what is looked at during those inspections.
But if we have to replace a water heater, it's already up to code. So why do we have to pay a licensed plumber to replace a water heater that's already been inspected and is up to code for us to put one back?
I guess I would defer to,
State
would
law.
the city, well, no, I mean, again, I do not do the utility inspections. In my time here in Thomaston, there has never been a permit issued to replace a water heater. Now, I've only been
I
here,
mean, first of all, it's already hot enough. When your water heater went out, you gotta spend $800 to $1,000 to replacing the water heater. Then you gotta go through all that other burden to pull the permit and get the inspection done. And I can understand if you doing something extra to that property, that bringing the property value up, I can see that getting the permit and getting inspection done. When you already replacing the stuff is already there, why you have to pull up another permit and get inspection done? Don't understand.
so it sounds like, to go along with what you said, Russell, it sounds like there are a lot of questions in terms of the legislative requirements for the city in terms of what the city will want
If
to
that's the
look
case,
at.
that if city just wanted to get extra money, just to save you being a property owner and you got a rent
No.
property, the $100 extra per year, I'm gonna charge you a property tax. I mean,
Am I-
just
The
have a
way I
less burden
understand
on our
it, and I'm not the
shoulders.
code expert, but the way I understand it, if you live there, you can do exactly what you're talking about. But if you expect him to live there, you can't. You need to have a
I
license.
understand what he just said. If a property is just being inspected and everything is good to go and it's livable, and now the water heater, all of a sudden the water heater went out and we wanted to replace the water heater, now I gotta get the licensed plumber to come here and replace my water heater. It would cost me more to just pay him more than the doggone hot water heater.
Bobby, when you do utility inspections, when you say it's good for power, you say it's good for power. You don't say the structure's up to code, do you?
No, just the utilities, what we do. We
Right,
just-
so it's safe for power. You're not saying that that 1920 structure is up to current code.
So we don't have to change rotten wood to get power turned on?
Yeah, now rotten wood is what he's talking
The
about.
structured sound to be able to get the power turned on.
Well,
Pop-off valves have to be 6 inches above grade, is
it's
that
a
right?
certain minimum standard code that we have to follow the checklist, which is on our checklist that the city adopted. And that is one of them. If it's not structurally sound, we can't, put somebody in there because they gotta have the basic minimum standard of living.
But you are passing it to minimum standard living, right?
Yes.
All right, so that means everything is up to code, correct?
Well, if it passes the code.
All right,
it's
so
No,
that
it's
water
not,
heater
it's
will be
not up to
passed.
state, it's not up to current code, it's up to property maintenance.
Property
code.
maintenance, minimum utility inspection code.
Changing the water heater wouldn't be maintenance.
Well, I mean, are you replacing it with the same one that was there? No, because it broke. You're replacing it with a new one.
Russell, there's several things that I hope y'all have taken into consideration. You're de-incentivizing, I think everybody in this room has bought houses that were in really bad shape. I own about 85 houses total, okay? And we've all, from a financial standpoint, bought houses that were in bad shape. And we've sunk money in it, we've put a heck of a lot of elbow grease in them, and made areas nicer because we did it. You're de-incentivizing that entire process. It goes along with something he says. But you're fixing to get, because we still have to have a livelihood, and either one or two things is gonna happen. Either we're gonna find a GC out there that like, here's $50, go pull the permit, see you later. Or we're all gonna say, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm gonna spend the next 40 years on the beach. And you put, this group sells out. We sink this ship. And we don't have a choice.
We can get 8% stock market any day of the week.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll go fishing
I will too.
before I go broke.
I 100% agree with you.
I can get way more.
We're gonna find, there's gonna be rampant fraud or whatever you want to say. And I'm not saying from us in particular, but in general. And I just want you to understand, I realize where you feel like your hands are tied, but it's coming.
We pay more property taxes than Quad, any of the other businesses. Look, I know I pay 70,000.
All we ask is for some common sense with it.
And we will, and if there's some things on our utility inspection that we need to tweak and work with the property owners, I don't mind doing that, as long as we work within the confines of the law.
'Cause, all right, you said a water heater, I would need a licensed plumber to do. What about a faucet? I'm replacing the faucet.
That's just a fixture.
A water
A
heater.
water heater's a fixture, isn't it?
Okay. Well,
An outside spigot.
Is that a state or a city?
Clean.
if the city doesn't, that would be a city. If the city doesn't want to require for a permit for a water heater, we don't have to require a permit for a water heater.
They want
That's
the
a little
money,
too
so
far.
that's why I pay your salary.
We can work with you if you can work with us on common sense stuff.
That comes back to
This group here
this,
has replaced
of what state
thousands
and what city.
of water heaters.
Well, I'll have to get with them. Again, I've been in 21 different communities. There are a lot of communities, they don't inspect re-roof jobs. They just let it fall on the contractors because they know they're not going to do it right. But it's something where if I'll get with you, Russell, and we can talk about what the city will and will not inspect, and that's something we can put on the website.
That work?
Because there's a retired GC somewhere finna make a killing.
Oh, and we'll let the state handle that too. I mean,
We've
that's
solved nothing
perfect.
doing it that way. We've solved nothing by doing it that way. You know,
Made us more crooked.
it's just, have some common sense is all we're asking.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm fine with commonsensical, practical approaches, but I do want to work within the confine of the law.
Of the state law.
I'm not
Right.
going to advise the city council to permit or issue anything that's contrary to the minimum standard. But if there's some common ground that makes your lives easier and the process easier, I'm all for it.
So where did this water heater where did that come in then? I mean, when did that start happening? To have a permit and a licensed contractor change water heater? When did that, is that a law that changed with the city? I mean, when did that change?
Well, that would be a permitting requirement. If you're going to pull a permit to replace it, then if you're not the owner occupant, that would go back to the state law. But if it's something that we're just not going to permit, do it yourself. Because the caveat comes into the permitting aspect. So if we're not going to permit hot water heaters, if we're not going to permit re-roofs, if we're not going to permit siding or different things like that, of course,
So you can
roofs-
choose what to permit.
the city has, to some extent, authority over that. Obviously, you open a lot of doors when you come into a situation where you say, well, we're not going to permit this, this, and this. It comes to the point, well, what are we going to still permit?
That's the life safety issues.
Yeah.
You can
A
look
water
around-
heater can
you-
be one.
You can look at some of these places in, around Silvertown, and the electrical line comes in right next to the back door. I don't know how all these children survived growing up in Silvertown, that line coming in the door. But,
That line will get
And in that
fixed
case,
after
at some
that
point,
tenant
a
moves out,
literal
they reset
agency
the
put
house
that there. EMC, Georgia Power.
yeah, they-
You know, and the question that the body's going to have to ask when we bring them any type of modifications, do you want landlords messing with gas lines and properties they rent?
So why would you pass to have a permit to change a water heater?
You
And a licensed contract, a licensed plumber? Why would you want that to be permitted?
If you had gas, for instance, that a licensed plumber went in and made that repair,
It's for what reason?
so it don't blow up,
Liability?
for health
Who's
safety.
gonna take liability?
Well, the person.
We are.
Yeah, but the
If you don't
person.
permit it,
We ain't got the liability.
Yeah, but the person that died is going to be up at City Hall too.
But City Hall's not gonna take any liability. There's no liability on y'all, it's all on us still.
It is liability because I got to send firemen there, I got to send police officers there, and they're going to have to go into that structure.
But the liability is gonna still fall on us for that incident, correct? So why are we giving them money for a permit and to pay somebody else to do it when the liability is still gonna fall on us?
For
Mr.
health
Bobby,
and
how long
safety.
you been with the city?
36 and a half.
Approximately how many times did you say we've had houses blow up from a gas water heater?
I'd rather let the fire department speak to that. 'Cause
They don't come to mind real,
That's right.
you know. They burn down from lightning strikes a little more often, would you agree?
Common sense.
Yeah, but if you ask AGL, how many times have they responded to a gas leak due to a hot water heater, I bet they'd say a few.
Yeah, and that can happen with anything, furnaces.
But do you not mitigate that response when you use a licensed contractor? That's the question.
We pass it on to somebody else, is all.
Right.
This is strictly my opinion. I honestly don't mind paying you $50 for a permit.
I do.
Don't make
I
me
do.
pay $1,200 to swap out a $380 hot water. I'm fine with you coming to check to see if I did it right. But, I mean, why, don't require us to pay, by the way, because when I call Cody Adams or whoever, or Jason Britt, you think they come in the next 2 weeks to change that hot water heater out? Not a chance. Not a chance.
Did
I'm
you
wi-
say
I'm-
that
I'm
you've
willing-
worked places that do not permit water heaters?
So why can we not follow that?
We can explore that, and I'm open to any suggestion from code, officials to make your guys easier. But I'm also gonna have to come to this board and we're gonna have to prove that it's life safety. And if code enforcement says it's not an issue and it saves our homeowners some problems and they don't have to get a licensed contractor, I'm all for it. Health and safety's gotta be first and foremost, but as long as we can assure that, I have no problem modifying any of the forms that we have for permitting requirements.
Same way with siding and roofing, you would reconsider that?
I ain't budging on roofing.
Siding, you
Siding.
would?
I don't know, I need to talk to him.
I that's
I
stuff
would like to
that,
know a safety concern with the side.
you know,
Still,
that's just,
I mean, from the legal, I guess, I know you can do it wrong, obviously.
Yeah,
But I mean,
there is a much
safety
safety
wise,
concern.
there is a safety concern?
The only safety concern would be depending on the age of the structure. If you don't put a vapor barrier up, you put some cheap vinyl up, something like that, you get water in, come in, get electrical. Obviously, that's a worst case scenario.
Right.
But otherwise, just installing siding is not a life safety.
Right.
So basically, I just put a roof on a house here. I got three different bids on this roof. I'm not gonna call any names of the companies. All three of them has business license with the city. One of them, which is state insured permit, $14,200. The guy that's got a business license here, come up here and pull the permit. The guy that done the work, $7,500. That's the difference in price there. That's gonna drive your rent skyrocket here. And then guess what everybody's gonna do? They're gonna go.
I want to make a mention. People keep thinking people are leaving Thomaston. Thomaston's growing. So Thomaston's population through our 2020 census, through April of 2020, was at 9,816 people within the city limits. Okay. In 2019, it was at 8,715. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think we're about 11,000 people right now. Thomaston is primed to grow because of our location, our proximity to Atlanta, our proximity to Macon, our proximity to Columbus, because of our lifestyle, this hometown feeling, we are primed to grow. Okay, we have people moving here from Coweta County, Clayton County, Fayette County, Henry County, where rent prices are $800, $1,000, $1,200 a month. Okay, Russell said it. We have substandard housing here, ton of it. When the mills closed 20 years ago, a lot of these homes were left to just fall into disrepair. I commend a lot of you that have come in here and bought properties and put money and put time and put effort into replacing them. But we have to have these standards, these minimum standards. We don't want people living in homes with floors that have holes in them. We don't want people living in homes with electricity issue, wiring issue, plumbing issues, mold, stuff that can kill people. We have that. People in this community live in homes that are substandard. You can sit here and tell me that they don't. I promise you that they do.
no, we're just saying.
I'm not saying that you guys. I'm not saying that you guys do that. But I'm telling you that
Y'all were the largest footprint. That's why we
The
invited.
biggest problem is those issues that you're talking about are affecting a lot of houses here.
Most definitely.
And these are not the issues. When you start having those people come about these houses, well, then maybe we need to have a discussion.
I can't pick and choose
But
from
you
a
can't.
from a
If you're
regulatory.
using common sense, you can.
We're not going to get into treating two different classes of people.
But here's the way you treat that. with an inspection. With an inspection by somebody who knows what they're looking at, knows what to look for. That way you can tell me, hey, Jared, I inspected 10 of your houses last year, man. And I don't know what you're doing, but it's not right.
I can tell you what happens when we go out and inspect work that's not done by a licensed contractor, by people who don't know what they're doing, because it happens all the time, and it's a waste of time.
And I think we pay you for your time then. And then you shut that down and you require us to get whatever it is at that point. Because the problem is, the minute you start letting the few hurt the many, the many's gonna quit and just start worrying about themselves. And Taylor, I 100% agree with what you're saying. People coming into Thomaston, more than 60-70% of my renters are from out of town. But you know the first thing they do look for when they come to town? A house. And if we don't have them to provide to them, what are we gonna do? Because, and the thing is, you know, when it comes to fixing up these dilapidated houses, even if it's a vacant house and that house is just seriously needs work, require that work. I completely agree with that and all of that. But there's got to be some incentive, you know. Otherwise, if we're going to be required to spend this kind of extra money to come in and fix these dilapidated houses, look right now, the Downtown Association, you guys are looking at giving incentives for new businesses. So, hey, I want to start a boutique or whatever it is, I'll give you a $5,000, $10,000 grant. What if I come in and take that $5,000 or $10,000 and I don't have a clue how to run a business, so I blow it, and it fails after 6 months? I mean, you can call that you wasted your money, or you can call that, hey, we took a chance on that, we incentivized that situation. But why not do that with houses? Why not do that with some of these houses that, if we are indeed required to go licensed contractor route, we're going to leave them alone? And then what? Then you just got empty houses, because I'm pretty sure the city's not going in and fixing up any houses.
That's number 5.
We're on 5 yet, man.
We still on 1.
Oh my God. We didn't cover any of these?
No, that's fine, and this is good. It's an iterative conversation, so if we need to have more of these, we probably should have had it a long time ago. So.
I definitely think it's, not that you're gonna have to do it. I mean, we're passionate about this stuff because it's coming out of our pocket. You know what I mean? We're passionate because we work for this. We work for the money. We take pride in it, those kind of things.
Look, like Taylor said, we got a housing problem.
No,
maybe you're not part of the problem. Maybe you're part of the
I agree you
solution.
have a problem.
We got a problem,
Right.
and it ties back to substandard housing,
But I
which
do
means
think
I have
the
to
way
have
you
some
fix
protocol
that
to bring it
problem
up.
is you talk to the people who are neck deep in it. Not look at the people who own 1 or 2 and are just shafting people. When you got wired,
That's
you
why I
can't take
invited
those
you.
problems and then say, oh, well, now buddy that owns 90, sorry man, the guy next door tried to do his own roofing and he screwed it up and it collapsed and killed somebody. So now you got to redo all of your stuff, or you got to do permits.
I'm a little frosted on roofing right now, so
Yeah.
roofing stuff.
I mean, apparently you got a bad roofer or something at your house or what. I mean, if you didn't send my guy over there, I can get the roof. I ain't had a permit for it, but I mean, I get it.
But I still
They
don't
have the
understand, you
process.
don't think we're gonna take care of our property.
Sir?
I still don't understand if you don't think we're gonna take care of our property, be sure that there's a good roof on that house. Why I need to pay y'all any money
I would
to
hope
see
that
that there's a
you
good roof on that
I
house?
would hope that you would try to. And, I did the same thing. I hired a licensed contractor, and guess what? Didn't work out.
That's a licensed contract, but we're asking is the homeowner going to take a little bit more responsibility in it? So why can you not give us the opportunity to be sure we do our houses right and not have to have a licensed contractor do it? Nor is the licensed contractor, I can see, you need to be sure that they are inspected. But the homeowner, we're going to put a roof on there, it's going to work.
I ain't giving up roofs.
I'm not asking you to give it up for a licensed contractor. You got to hold them accountable. But the homeowner, they're going to put a roof on their house.
I'm curious, this may be a question for you, state law wise or whatever it is. Why can't I do my work on my home I live in? Is it because it's only my life and my children and my wife and my dogs at stake?
That's exactly it.
What if I sell my house?
If you sell your house before the end of that 24-month period, you are not allowed to obtain another permit in the state of Georgia unless you obtain licensing for the work you're going to do.
But I didn't
That's
get a
not
permit
Thomas
for my house, right? I mean, in other words, like you're saying, if I.
Well, that's why Georgia's still a buyer beware state. But that's why they always recommend home inspections, due diligence period, because if you go in and like, oh my gosh, this is a lovely sunroom, it wasn't permitted, that's not your fault if you didn't do that research before.
We got one with a deck right now, just sold last week. We run into it all the time. So we know this is probably the beginning step of a long conversation. We can have as many of these as we need, So let's move on through the list, and then if we have some time at the end, or if we all want to schedule another one, be fine by me. But I like the conversation. We've had some great questions. I think we've got some research we need to do on some of our, yes, sir.
I just got one more question. Where do I get reimbursed
You
for
don't.
that money that I
You don't.
spent? When they told me that I had to change that panel out because it was a fuse panel. It wouldn't turn the power on till I changed that panel out. And he said the reason is because it's a fuse panel, not because it wasn't labeled. I would have had it labeled that day because I was trying to get power on for that tenant. You think I'm going to turn around and spend thousands of dollars to change the panel out?
Versus labeling it if it needs labeling?
So that was that bugs me that he would say that, you know, because I know what happened.
Yes, sir.
Russell, I think one thing that we're all kind of asking for here is, we hear you say that we have a big problem with substandard housing.
We do.
Okay,
And some of that, and some of that may not be tied to the physical structural integrity.
okay.
Some of it may be more simple fits, not health and safety. Maybe it's just general property maintenance, right? It's unsanitary living conditions. So when I say substandard housing, it doesn't necessarily tie to the physical structure, right? So some of it is, right? We got some of that, but some of it's other things.
I think what we're getting at is if you had a rollout plan to where you worked on the true problems to start with, and don't limit us the ability to change out water heaters and vinyl siding. This man was probably changing out vinyl siding, you know, at 8 years old. We've all did this.
I'm willing to
our
work
entire
on some of that. Like,
And
so what I'm gonna
work with the
do.
really big problems, and let's do it in a funnel.
So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take your comments. I'm gonna meet with my building inspection people, and then I'm gonna talk to my attorney. And then if they say, you know, low liability, other communities are doing it, it's ease of for our property owners, I have no problem making the change. But on some of those issues, you know, if we do have questionable life safety issues, you know, we're going to stick to some of those minimum standards. So it's not a la carte. It has to be health and safety tied to it, and I have to get the proper approvals. But I don't mind making a recommendation.
I believe everybody here understands safety. You know what I'm saying? Oh, we agree with you, but same kind of water here, man. So I mean, I appreciate you hearing us. You know what I'm saying? And revisiting this.
If our tenants get hurt, we're out of business.
Right.
Like, I don't care what he says. I'm gonna do it my way to make sure that those people living there are safe. If he says, that'll probably be good, and I don't think it's good, I don't care what he says. I'm doing it my way. It's my house. It's my butt on the line. It's my checkbook. Okay? And I asked him
Maybe
when-
we're speaking to the exception, not the rule here tonight. But I can assure you that we have some landlords that don't care.
Right.
Yeah.
Start there.
Exactly.
That's why I'm here.
Can't pick and choose. I mean, I can't just go and say, I'm gonna go after you.
Why not?
JD, if you see a big problem with a house, y'all have the authority to cite them.
We do. We do.
And
But
if
when
we
I'm
see you doing that,
But when
then
I'm
we're
talking,
like, hey, I'm impressed
when
with
I'm
these
talking
guys.
about repairs and permitting, what I'm telling you is that I've got to apply an equal standard. That's for them and you.
I can't say you can put your hot water heater in, but you can't.
Yeah.
You can't do this, but you can't. That's what I think you.
But I guess that's why I asked, Mr. Bobby, in the last 30 years, we have any water heater permits?
No.
And we don't really seem to have a big issue with it here. That's what we're asking for. And when you use
Don't
comparables,
mind looking at it.
and when you use comparable, municipalities, please don't go to Fulton County, Cobb County.
We're not.
Exactly.
Peachtree City.
We can't, we're small business owners.
And the thing is, you can make sure there's no car wrecks in Upson County by closing off roads. But that don't mean that's the right way to do it.
We will work with you, but we will make substantial changes to our housing stock within the next 5 to 10 years. I can promise you.
And it's critical. It's critical that we do. We as a community, perception of our community. I can tell you that I'm over downtown, okay? We're making a lot of changes. We really want to invest in our downtown. We want to bring that life, improve the quality of life of our community. And you can do that in downtown Thomaston. We're working on our zoning to allow for mixed-use development. We want to have residential in some of these buildings, okay? I'm not going to name names, but we have a building downtown. I recommended that we do loft apartments. And I was basically told that Thomaston's economy cannot support loft apartments. Do you guys agree with that?
No.
No.
Exactly.
Well, it depends on how
And I'm gonna tell you this. This building the upstairs is probably about 4,000 square feet. Could put 800 to 1,000 square feet loft apartments in there. Okay, I'm 28 years old. From the cities I've lived in, $800 to $1,000 a month for something of quality. Okay, in downtown, I would pay that as a young male. There's 493 spots within a 2-block radius of our courthouse square. 493 spots.
$1,200 a month to park when the court's in up there.
493 spots. Okay, end of the day, they told me that Thomaston's economy could not support $800 to $1,000 lofts. You agree?
I agree it could.
It can. You agree that it can support that?
It would have to have parking, but.
That's beyond point.
Well,
Can Thomaston?
I agree.
Okay, so the reason is it's the perception. It's the perception that our community is poor. It's the perception our community is cheap. It's the perception our community that we can't do this. You know, that we're not Griffin, we're not Macon, we're not Columbus, we're not Peachtree City. And yeah, we don't want to be those cities. We want to be Thomaston. But we as a community have to work together and be proactive to changing that perception of our community.
I got a big disagreement with one thing you said.
Yeah, go ahead.
28, yeah, 800 to 1,200. What I don't want to do is kick the 82-year-old widowed veteran out of a house because he can't pay now what my input cost is. I can't use that as a pass-through expense to a man that's on a fixed income that did what he did so I can be here.
And I agree with that. And obviously there's a huge difference between, a loft apartment in downtown Thomaston and a 1-bedroom unit, in East Thomaston.
It's a 3-bedroom he's lived in since the man got out of the war.
And on the flip side.
And we're gonna say, no, you can't live here because I'm moving this guy from Peachtree City in because he'll pay $1,200? No, man.
We don't care what you charge for rent.
No,
what we care about is that we have adequate housing stock that's safe and clean.
If I've got to pay an electrician to go change the DFI out,
We know you don't care what we charge, and that's great, but by default, we have to charge more then.
Now, I get
in a
that.
situation like with the loft apartments. I agree with loft apartments. I made an offer on the Henson building. I'm pretty sure that's what you're talking about. They turned me down, but either way, point is,
Put it this
that
way.
particular building,
We're not gonna
I have to put $300,000 in it to make those loft apartments.
We're not going to put a
And
price
so-
on health and safety.
Right, and I
Whatever
agree.
we deem that code is,
That's the question.
We're
What do we
wrong.
deem health and
and
safety?
that's what we talked about. If there's some wiggle room on
Right.
some things that are, 6 half dozen of other, I don't mind working on
Right,
that.
right, and I don't think anybody does. I mean, that's obviously our goal too. We have that in mind every day. Because like he said, at the end of the day, whether City of Thomaston gets sued or not, everybody up here is going home. If I get sued, I might not be going home, you know what I mean? I'll be going probably to one of the houses I got if I got any left. So, point is, it's not like the little here just don't understand, let's keep it safe or whatever. So, but I think if we're very, and it's gonna be hard, I think, for some of the people making the decisions, because that I'm aware of anyway, no one making the decisions has as much skin in the game as everybody accepting the decisions. So with that being said, I don't think as long as there's an open discussion about what it is and we've got realistic, common sense kind of, state law, look, we might bicker about it and we might argue about it. Nobody's going to disagree we got to do what state law says. But if there's something under that state law that this city can do to be better, using common sense, because state law covers a lot of people.
It's got to be better because the impetus is what we've done to this point. It ain't worked.
Right. Well,
We gotta do
agree
that.
it has to work, but I will agree it definitely needs improvement. And so, like I said, I think if because this is no different than raising a minimum wage or different. This is a circle. This isn't a straight line. This circle is gonna do this right. So whatever you do to us in this circle, they get somewhere else in that circle, and then it gets somewhere else in this circle, and then eventually it's gonna come back to you one way or another. Just like whatever we do is gonna eventually come back to us. Whatever tenant does, eventually gonna come back. I mean, that's the way that works. So I think as long as we, can everybody put their heads together to come up with a solution that has real common sense input from everybody.
No problem with that.
I think that's, I don't see there's a problem that can't be solved.
And Jared, I
So-
think that's what Russell, we've been pounding away at the same issue. I think what Russell has said and what we're committed to, the whole reason to have here, and one of you said, Jake, that you want to be talking with people that are neck deep. Well, y'all are neck deep. And the whole point of this is to say, hey, here are the laws, these are the state laws, we can't go below that. These are health and safety issues, we're not gonna put that at risk. But the rest of the stuff, Russell, get with him and we'll talk about that stuff, and that's our commitment to do that.
Yeah, that sounds like that's great too, man.
Appreciate it. Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna move on to number. I'm on 4.
You were on 1 a minute ago, so maybe it's.
So we're gonna talk about code enforcement, and there's all kind of city codes, but one in particular that I want to talk about is this one right here. This is the International Property Maintenance Code that the city's adopted by reference. I have uploaded this to the city website, so it's there for everybody in the city to review. So in addition to the codes that we have, this specifically ties to property. Talks about how high your grass can be. Talks about junk and abandoned vehicles. It talks about the exterior treatment that Brad was talking about. You got to have your house painted. You can't have a bunch of junk. You can't have weeds. So I would invite anybody that's here and anybody that's watching via YouTube to please go on the city's website and review the International Property Maintenance Code. Because what I have tasked our code enforcement, if it ain't got paint, cite it. If it's got high grass, cite it. If it's got rot on it, cite it. If it's got a hole in the roof, if it's got shingles missing, cite it. If it's got a junk and abandoned car, cite it. These are the things we're going for. All right, and so let's talk a little bit about process. Because code enforcement, yes sir.
Quick question. If it's abandoned car, junk in the yard, grass, you citing the tenant or landlord?
I'm citing the property owner. Because when they get into court, they say we have no chain of custody of the property and I got solicitor issues. So if I got property problems, I'm citing the property owner.
But not vehicles. That's not our property.
I just had, if it's abandoned and it's on your property,
So we got the right to call.
Now,
That's between-
Don't call
that's-
the record service, because we're not coming to get it, because we're getting cited right now, or threatened to get cited because of abandoned cars at our lot. Don't call
if we
us.
got abandoned car, and I tell you, and Chief's here, and I think in 2 years we wrote 198 citations, I believe it was, on junk and abandoned cars.
Typically, though, we have been citing the owner of the vehicle, is what we have. If we can determine that. If we could not determine that, then yes, we would probably cite the property owner.
But you can tow it off your property.
We can.
We
The
did
property
that.
owner can.
The property that I took care of, we had 300 families. And if somebody came in, and there were people who actually came in and dumped cars there. And we put a sticker on the window, told them who to call, 24 hours later, the car was gone.
But I can
Out
tell.
of our problem.
I can tell you, based on past experience and going through the adjudication process, that if there's a tenant and there's a property owner, that ticket is going to the property owner.
I have a question for Chief then. I have a house right now. I've got a car. I mean, it's been sitting there forever. I know it doesn't. I don't think people have a rental car. Nevertheless, so let's say I get cited. If I call your office, because it's in the city, if I call your office and say, hey guys, I need y'all to tow a vehicle for me.
I'm not towing it. If it's on private property, that's yours. You can tow it.
So I can.
You can call
okay,
a record.
all right, fair enough. So if I go hook my pickup truck to that car and move, or if I call a record service and they do agree to tow it, which like Kyle's said, they're not going to, but if I pull it off that property and now that property, the tenant calls you, your office, and says, hey, the landlord of this house just pulled my car off of this property. I didn't give him the permission to do that. What will happen to me then?
Sticker, the way we used to do it, we put a sticker on there, we say who to call, we're towing this vehicle. In 24 hours, you put the time, the date, and if you don't hear from them and that car's still there, then you got your record that you made
Okay.
an
And so
effort.
if I
to
do that-
tell them that
And take it off.
We would advise them that that's a civil matter between them and their landlord.
And as a cautionary, I have been advised that we do not give legal advice. Contact your attorney.
Give him fines, so I mean,
We
But
will
you
find.
see the concern in that.
Yes.
So now they take me, because here's another concern, they take me to Superior Court, and now, not only did I tow the vehicle, I damaged it. I tore the vehicle apart. So now,
I'm charged with getting rid of junk and abandoned vehicles. If we see a junk and abandoned vehicles, we're writing tickets.
Can you consider, finding the tenant?
No.
Is it illegal?
It has chain of custody issues, and I've already went through that in court.
I think that my suggestion will be whoever the utility names will be for that particular house is supposed to be held responsible for anything.
Now, because this is where it goes. If I have to get an order and abate it, I'm filing a lien on your property, which goes
No,
on.
I ain't talking about the filing a lien on the property. If you got abandoned vehicles or something.
Like the chief alluded to, if it's identifiable, don't have an issue with that. But if it still remains on the property, that's like if your tenant litters on your property, it's on your property. I'm citing the property owner.
But how if the property owner, like, if you got the property, you know, you don't visit that often?
I'm cleaning up the city. If you got junky property, I'm citing the property owner.
What's an example of an unidentifiable vehicle?
It ain't got a tag on it and they can't run it.
Well, I mean, if you got a VIN number, can you run the VIN? You can.
Yes, we can run it.
So as long as it's got a VIN number, I'm good. I'm not getting a ticket.
I'm not making that call. That's going to be officer discretion because I'm calling Mike saying every junk car you find, you write a ticket.
But
he also
Mike,
he just told me too, he'll write you a ticket, but if you get it addressed before the court date, the ticket's going away.
Right.
if
So
the car either has a tag or a VIN number.
So let's talk a little bit about the adjudication process, right? So code enforcement's quasi-civil, quasi-criminal, and we actually have two methods by which we can approach it. One of them is we're going to give you proper notice to cure the issue. So you're not just going to get a ticket, or if you do, there's going to be some sort of concession where that's dismissed before you go to court. So you're going to have time to fix the problem. Nobody's going to get hit with a citation where you don't have a reasonable amount of time to fix the problem. Okay, so once notification is made, you will then have a right to appeal. You'll have a cure period by which you can fix the issue. After that point in time, a citation will be issued and a court date. I'm asking for mandatory appearance now on code violations so that even if the citations, I want you in court. So every ticket I'm writing on code enforcement, I'm just going to be a
City court.
municipal court.
Mr. Michael,
Yes, sir.
Is there anything against the law to where we can cover our bases by just putting something in the rental agreement?
We're not providing legal advice. I would consult with your real estate attorney.
What I'm saying is if you have an abandoned property on the house, my officers are executing common sense. If they can identify the owner and the owner is present, and I can cite them, I will. But if there's been an abandoned car that may be registrable, but that person's long gone and skipped town and it's left on your property, then it's coming to you. I'm just saying, if there's a legal owner to the car that I can make contact with, I'll deal with them. But which is common sense. But if there's a property, a car, and it's registered to Marcus, but Marcus is down in Texas, then I'm coming to you.
As long as they still live there, they're getting the property.
So I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but this gentleman back here said he doesn't visit his properties that often. Well, how do you know if, you know, the kids aren't running through the screens and they got dogs tied up on the front porch? Because when I ride through and I see some really bad properties, and, you know, you all seem like...
I don't think we got a bad property and we maintain our property well, but like, I don't think I feel, I mean, I might be wrong, I don't feel like I'm supposed to go to the property once a month or every other month to go through it, make sure it is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, if they
So-
were, if they were paying their rent, you know, you would, you'd go and collect the
course they-
rent. But, so do you?
Well, I'm gonna use Mr. Anthony's analogy. He's gonna put that roof on because he cares about his property. If it's junky property, I'm coming to the property owner.
And I'm still interested in how you vet your tenants and
A lot of
how
our
you,
tenants are employees of ours.
your tenants are employees.
Of ours.
Okay. You know,
So
because.
that's mostly how we vet them. The other tenants we have are long-term tenants, and they always pay on time if there's any
You
issues
do
with the
background
house.
checks or,
Some
you
of
know,
them,
check
yes, ma'am.
the sex offender registry and things like that.
Some of them, yes, ma'am.
There's only one, well, there's actually two rental houses on my street, and, but I don't like the, you know, the guy who backs his car up to the door, you know, looking like he's gonna make a quick getaway and stuff, you know, because if you put somebody in there that injures somebody in the community, you know, that's liability. I'm a retired insurance person, so, you know, and yeah, I'm the one that would be complaining about dogs and, you know, rotten wood and things like that, you know, because we're trying to lift up Thomaston, we're trying to, you know, while y'all are all here, I'm just glad to have the opportunity to hear you out.
Well, and we're not just talking to y'all. We got a YouTube stream, and this is for every property owner. It's not tied to just y'all.
Yeah, I'm not saying anybody
So-
is doing that, I'm just curious about how you keep up.
I mean, it's a great idea, have a Thomaston look like a Cumming, Georgia, but if you want it to look like a Cumming, Georgia, you have a Cumming, Georgia SS as well as, you know, the jobs and opportunities and everything else.
Well, if it
And
looks
that's
like
what
it does, we
Demolish
can't.
all the houses, older houses in there and give them a fair amount of money and rebuild the brand new construction. It'll
But
be-
when we bring
that's
people
one way to
in to
fix it.
tour our community and they see what they see, it doesn't sometimes tell a good picture, and we're trying to change that.
I
It
will,
was done
I will
back
say
in the
though,
70s when
charging,
they brought Section 8,
making it
y'all
more
killed the town then.
costly for us won't fix
No,
that.
I'm
I
saying,
promise.
if you own property, whether it's commercial,
Yeah, they did.
real,
They said
you know,
they did.
rental,
Yeah, they inherited.
R1,
Yeah.
whatever is zoned, if you own property, you are not immune from code enforcement. Property maintenance is applicable to
It
everybody.
sounds
not-
like if you're a renter, you're immune to code enforcement.
Now, if you're a property owner,
I know, but it
if you
sounds
own
like if
property,
you're a renter, a tenant, you are immune to
that's
code
for y'all to
enforcement.
figure out.
Okay, so that's for us to figure out, how come repairs and maintenance are? 'Cause
I'm
that's-
figuring
that's
out
a
the
safety
problem.
concern.
Health and safety, which is tied to a state statute,
Right.
where the General
Yeah, we
Assembly
established
has
that.
ascertained that if you hold X license, just like I can't be a doctor if I don't have a medical
Right,
license.
fair enough, fair enough.
They've made some parallel analogous to, you know, electricians or HVAC. So health and safety, property maintenance.
Russell, can I say something? I am the director of housing, which I manage over 300 houses. And I have private owned property as well. And I'm addressing the young man that was talking about, can you put in your lease? Your lease is your only legal contract. If I own my personal property, I don't want them parking on my grass. I don't want them tying dogs up to my thing. I visit my property. And if you don't visit your property, you have no way of knowing what's going on until it tear up. I go in my property, in my lease, I tell them, I'm going to visit this property. I'm going to inspect it myself twice a year. That means 6 months I'm coming to see you. I am a HUD certified inspector. So I go in and I check all of my and they are surprised because I don't mind getting dirty. I'll check my hot water heater. I'll check my furnace. I check everything. But if I don't go in there, and I made that mistake, and it cost me a nice $30,000 because I didn't go in there because it was a relative. So I didn't go in there. Oh yeah, and yeah, when he moved out, I had to spend about $30,000 to $40,000 to get my house back up to par. So you know what? I learned that very quickly. Oh, I'm coming to see you every 6 months. You don't want me to come? Then, you know, you have to move out of my house. Okay? So that's how you're going to be able to say you can't have cars parked around your unit. And you can, and it's in your lease. Your lease will follow you to court. They signed it. Now, did they read it? Probably not, but it doesn't matter because you signed it. And when you sign it, then it is a legal and binding contract, and it will follow you. So when I addressed the young man that said, can you put in your lease? Absolutely, put it in your lease. And you won't have the problem. I am certified in several different areas of housing, and that's what I do. And even in my public housing, a lot of them, you know, if they park different places or do different things, I'm like, we're going to inspect. And because we are on site, and if you live out of town, yes, that may be a problem, but then that may be an opportunity for you to have somebody that's going to go by and check on your property, because that's the only thing you're going to have that's going to keep them from demolishing your property. That's your asset. That's my asset. And like I said, I made the real expensive mistake of not inspecting because, oh, that's my family, so I'm not going to do it. Oh yeah, right. Okay. So at the end, yeah, it costs you a lot of money. So you're going to have to visit your property, and then you can enforce your lease.
And once again, I just come back to the commitment that we'll do. We're not gonna be okay with violation of state law. We're not gonna be okay with if we set codes, we're gonna enforce those codes and we're gonna raise the standard. But if there's something that y'all think is unreasonable, it's not a violation of state law, and it doesn't endanger health and safety, we will look at it. And I think Russell will get with the building inspector and we'll do that. So our commitment is doing that, but our commitment is equally, we will protect health and safety, we will enforce the law, and we'll enforce the codes. If you see something that you say, that just doesn't make sense, well, we're willing to look at that.
I want you to understand where we're at on the magistrate end of, like, say, tall grass, trash in the yard. As long as they are current with the rent due, we have a very difficult time by Georgia landlord tenant law doing evictions.
Even more so during COVID.
It's not going to happen, you know, during that situation. But so I either got to go mow Miss Maybell's grass, or I'm getting a ticket. Now I can't go evict Miss Maybell because she's current. That's where I want you to understand, you know, our difficulties on that part.
And that's on one of our inspection lists. Say if the utilities got cut off for non-payment, we had to go over and do an inspection. If you got trash, if you got tall grass, if you got abandoned vehicle in your, we won't turn those utilities back on to us.
I think the point Chris is making though is, I understand breach of contract 100%. What I also understand is when we take that contract to magistrate, and we pay $87.50 or whatever it is, and then they serve them, all right, they have 7 days, business days to apply. Then, and they can ask for an extension on that, I'm sure even COVID is even more so. But then we go through that process. We get into court with magistrate judge, and is this person, you know, are they up to date on the rent? Yeah. Well, I mean, is the power on in the house? Well, yeah, they paid the power bill. So what's the problem? Well, they signed the agreement that they wouldn't put dogs in the house. Okay, we need you to make sure you get the dogs out of the house. Okay, we'll take the dogs out of the house. Okay, so we leave magistrate court after costing me $87.50. And then let's say I see him again. It doesn't, in my opinion, unless somebody's had this happen that I'm unaware of, magistrate judge is not going to evict that tenant if they're current on their rent, their living conditions are safe, those kind of things, unless just some rare non-COVID, which obviously is here for a long time, situation comes up. So now, let's say let's say mowing the grass. All right, so now, like Chris said, now our option is to go mow the grass. So I'm like, you know what, screw it, I'll go mow the grass. And I sling a rock through the car window while I'm mowing the grass. So now I got to fix the car window on the grass that I wasn't responsible to mow. But because I'm the tenant, I'm responsible to mow it. Now I can't evict them because in the lease, I put in the lease, you're responsible for mowing the grass, and you're not. You see the problem here.
I understand, but at some point, people choose a particular business venture. You chose that.
Okay.
I'm telling you, I'm not gonna
I
have.
would like that response.
I'm not.
Right when we walked, that was perfect response.
I'm not gonna have junky
That's the business we
properties.
chose.
You
So
can't-
that's our solution to that.
You don't have an avenue to go after their utilities for code violations?
No, not for not for property maintenance. Not if it's not health and safety.
You said not if it's not health and safety?
Correct.
But-
I have to have an immediate, compelling. I mean, I can't cut your power off because your grass is.
Well,
down.
add the fine to the bill.
I can't.
And then if they don't pay the bill, then-
I can't do that because
Well,
it's
if
not.
they have
It's not.
standing water, that's mosquitoes. We've got West Nile very bad around here. That's a safety issue if there ever was one to me.
So I'm just saying, we don't have an avenue here. You understand, like, what I'm saying? We don't have an avenue to solve the problem.
Did I pay all the utilities?
Yeah.
I think the avenue would be the magistrate of support.
Yeah, no, the option would be for the utilities to just, we keep them all in our name, and then we just got the power off, and then by law, they can't live there. But then we're stuck with a $1,200 utility bill for each thing. So, you know, I mean,
I know you can't give legal advice, but try to come up with something from y'all to give us one avenue to take. If you're gonna fight us, work with us.
No, we're going to give you notice of the violation before. Well, there'll be no fine. We're going to say, hey, 12 inches, time to cut the grass, and then we're going to.
Dandelions or grass?
It says noxious weeds or grass.
Dandelions are bad when the grass is tall. Dandelions.
Look, if you got one sprigging up, we gonna let you go. But it's pretty obvious, right?
You said no fines?
No, we're gonna give you due call. We're gonna give you due notice, right?
You
Of
got
an
a
issue.
chance to fix it.
Yes.
before you mind.
You just don't have an
I
avenue.
understand it, you know, it goes with the territory. You're in this business, see, we gotta deal with it, I mean.
And I guess-
We're not looking to y'all to fix our problem.
No, because that's a problem that we require, as far as maintenance and upkeep, whether they cut grass, we have to, but I don't know, I'm not.
Look, we have probably been more than slack with COVID. We've been more lax with sign requirements and certain things because we understand businesses are struggling. A lot of them were shut down. You couldn't go in to eat, and all these little snipe signs start popping up over time. We say, you know what? This is once in a lifetime pandemic. We're going to err on the side of business. But we're to the point now where I got grass too high, I got junk and abandoned vehicles, I've got a garbage contractor who's lack of employees and some other contractual issues, haven't been picking up garbage, and things are just compiling, and it's time to pump the brakes and say, time to go back to normal, we got to clean it up, and property maintenance is one of those.
Can we dump at the landfill, even though those are not our utility bills, and that be taken care of? Or
If you're a city resident,
4,000 pounds per thing, right? Okay.
But you're not a city resident.
I'm not a city resident, right? I live in county.
we have vacancies.
Utilities are too much in the city.
Got a house on Rich.
If you keep grass cut.
All right, so the process, due notice, right, cure period, citation, court date, adjudication, right? So the judge issues. The reason why we're doing mandatory appearances is if you have a really big lot and Taylor's gonna charge me $300 to cut it and my ticket's only $150, I'm gonna stroke the city a check for $150 and I'm not gonna cut my grass. Then I gotta send Bobby back out there again, and we gotta start the whole process with due notice, cure period, citation, court. So everybody on a property maintenance is getting a mandatory appearance. The other process that we follow is an in-rem action. It's not actually a citation to the property owner. It's an actual action that we file against the property. These are when we have serious health and safety issues. I will get with Bobby. Notice will be given that the property is unsafe and unsanitary. It's inhabitable. Bobby will then placard the property. At that point, I've got to contact an appraiser who's going to come out and give me the value of the structure only. I'm going to get an affidavit from the building inspector giving me the cost of rehabilitating the structure. If the cost of rehabilitating the structure is at least 50% of the appraised value of the structure, I'm going to notify all of the property owners. I'm gonna notify the tax commissioner. I'm gonna run an ad in the paper, and then we're gonna file an order in Superior Court that will first be held in municipal court, and we're gonna ask for an order to demolish the structure. Once the structure is demolished, all Bobby's time, Brett's time, my time, the attorney's time, the contractor's time gets filed onto a lien. And in the state of Georgia, a nuisance abatement lien falls only second to a tax lien. So we've got about 2 or 3 of those going on right now. And I've asked Bobby to do 1 a week, but he tells me we can't do it about 2 a month. So we're getting voluntary compliance on 50% of the tear downs. So that is the number 4. That is what happens when the property sits there and it doesn't get fixed up, is that we file an in-rem action on the property, we tear it down, file a lien, and we sell it.
What is the time period on something like that as far as like?
So from notice, the way the law reads, I have to have the hearing no sooner than 15 days after the notice and no longer than 45 days. So it moves relatively quick, goes to municipal court, you have an option to appeal to Superior Court.
But I don't think that's going to be the case with anybody in there.
No, these are, you can't live in them. Really bad. The cost of rehab is way more than the structure, but that's what I said. Some of our housing stock and commercial structures, old mill buildings, you know, we have some of these that we've got to attack. And whether I go the former route or the route I just explained, the reality of it is that taxpayers are subsidizing about 95 to 99% of this entire process. So when you write your $150 ticket for high grass, Bobby's had time in it. He's had to come back. He's had to draft a notice. We've had to mail it, and we have to go back out, visit the property. We have to issue a citation. Then I got to get involved. I got to pay the judge. I got to pay the solicitor, and 150 is a drop in the bucket. So, just that's not your plight, but as taxpayers that you own a lot of property, I want you to understand that property maintenance doesn't necessarily fall to the person whose grass, you know, got the citation. It's being subsidized heavily by the taxpayers.
What kind of time is on like the grass cutting?
So the way the law reads is we have reasonable time. I'm going to give you 7 days. And that reasonable amount of time will differ dependent upon the code violation, right? What I am asking for on property maintenance codes is that we do not issue blanket permits that are good for a full 6 months. There will be conditional permits that have timestamp requirements that you must do X by Y. You must do B by Z. And then in the event you default, we go to the next process in the adjudication process. So what happened before, you have a code violation, you pull a permit, you know it's good for 6 months, nothing happens for 5.5. We ain't doing that anymore. Question on property maintenance or code violation. Like I said, we've uploaded it to the city website. It's out there for any citizens. Now, I will tell you, I'm a little short on horsepower right now. I got Bobby. Brett tells me that he's leaving, so I've got another contractor coming on board. We had one accident, so I'm, 4,500 housing units. That's not counting commercial, utility inspections, building inspections, or permits. I'm down to 1 guy. So it's going to take me a little bit of time. City Council did authorize last night at the meeting. They gave me money to hire 2 additional code enforcement officers. So hopefully we'll get them on board and up to speed pretty soon. Preaching to the choir. I know a lot of y'all do a great job with your properties, and for that I appreciate it. For your neighbors or the people that maybe don't, you know, one of the things that I think is missing, if your neighbor is that old widow lady and she can't cut her grass, maybe we cut her for her. So, any questions on code enforcement or property maintenance? And then I'm going to hit my last topic for the night, and then I will open it back up for questions. So, I'm going to talk about solid waste, garbage collection. And this is for benefit of the city council, you hear everybody on YouTube, we're actually gonna put something in the utility bill and we're gonna do some social media. So this is what the solid waste ordinance says. Everything that you have that is not cardboard, inert material, or white goods per se has to be in a secure container. So everybody rides down the road and you see all this stuff just loosely piled. That is a code violation. We're gonna start writing littering tickets on it. If it ain't in the dumpster, it's a ticket. Yard trimmings intended for disposal should not exceed 6 inches in diameter nor 5 feet in length. Talks about how they have to be bundled. All this is on the city website, and we'll make sure that this is paired out. Solid waste allowed by this article should be placed at the curb or the alley. Side shall not be placed within 15 feet of a utility pole or fixture, under any type of utility service or lateral, nor within the streets or alleys so to obstruct traffic or storm drains. One of the biggest problems we have is loose material people put out on the side of the road. That's a code violation. We have people that put stuff under power poles. That's a code violation. We have people that put stuff by power poles or under power poles. That is a code violation. Per our contract with our contractor, they're not required to pick up that stuff if they're in violation of our own ordinance. Problem that we have is that sometimes it's hard to identify necessarily who put it there, which defaults to me back going to the garbage contractor, and then they have to make a trip back and pick it up. So any help you can give me in this matter will be greatly appreciated with garbage. We have a pretty good ordinance. I am not tickled about the provision that allows people to put stuff out by the side of the road. I think it invites junkiness to our city, but we've been accustomed, and I think if we do it in a well-mannered way and we stick to the intent of the ordinance, then we could probably get by. Those are some of the issues that we have with solid waste right now. There are some prohibitions about what you can and can't put in here. There's also a provision in the ordinance that I interpret, and if we need clarification, I can probably get an ordinance modification that if patrons continue to place loose rubbish beside their garbage cart, then I have the authority to continue to place and bill that customer garbage carts until all of their loose refuse is contained within a cart. So I'd say about 80% of them are overflowing and got stuff beside them. So those are some of the things that we're addressing. Those are some of the remedies that we have in place. So it's not just property maintenance. We have some garbage issues. There is a provision just specifically in here for landlords, and this has to do with evictions, and for some reason I don't think I printed that section. But I'll go off memory. So if you have an eviction, we have asked the police department to partner with the magistrate judge to be familiar with when evictions happen. So cannot be on the city right of way, cannot be on the city street. Has to be secure at all times, and the city will not pick it up.
So you want us to haul it to the dump for you, basically, right?
Yes, city's not picking up your eviction.
But we can't haul it straight to the dump.
Yeah, if the dump will take it, the dump will
You don't
take it. I
have to
think
hold
there's
it any day, or you said.
that's between you and the magistrate. I'm just saying, if you put it on my right of way or on my street, that's littering. The property owner gets a ticket. Has to be secured, and that is not covered in garbage pickup. You do an eviction, that's on you.
I think you got to hold it 7 days.
Got hold for 3 days.
It's got to be secure. So what we have,
Secure.
it can't be rummaged through. Because what we have is we do evictions, people leave, I get neighbors, they come through, they go through it, and I got trash everywhere.
What would be a solution to that? I mean, what are you thinking?
I'm looking for ingenuity, and you know, if y'all can come up with a great means to keep that secure that meets the confines of the law, I'm all for it. I just can't have it loose out in the right of way and people going through it.
And actually in the city, or well, the state law says once that constable serves that writ and drives off, it's considered abandoned property.
So it don't have to sit there for 3 days?
That's the state law that they just
So
told
you
you.
knew to me, I thought it had to be 3 days.
We're not providing legal advice. I'm just telling you that if you do an eviction, that we're trying to pair up with the magistrate to know which units are hit, and if it's not secure, or if it's on my right of way, that's a litter ticket.
Well, I guess in your pairing with magistrate, you can verify that they don't require us to leave it on the right of way then, right?
Georgia
Every
landlord
one
has
we've
to be
always
all
done,
required.
you had to drag that stuff out of the house. And trust me.
It
we
is
had to
a
drag that
city
out.
ordinance that we vetted and we put into place last year. The way the state law says is it has to be in a secure location. There's nothing that says you can put it on my right of way.
From a homeowner's point of view, I've seen people come through the alley and dump like a mattress or a dishwasher, but, you know, why can't, like, as a homeowner, if I've got to dispose of like a dishwasher, you know, why can't I pay, like, call the garbage pickup people and say, hey, can you come get it? And there's a charge. To me, there should be a charge for that. Because I have no way to get it to the dump, but why should they pick up appliances and box springs and mattresses without charging extra?
It's in the ordinance. It's in the current contract, and it's in the ordinance, and it has specific provisions. You know, you can put that stuff in the street as long as you don't obstruct traffic or storm drains, and that's an allowable, that's currently an allowable practice.
Well, it seems like it ought to be charged for. Would you make that change, please?
Well, technically, there is a charge for it. I mean, right, it's part of your sanitation charge.
So in that, you will pick it
That's a
up.
bargain. That's a bargain.
And it's a great city service, right? We just need to figure out a way to manage it and present it better.
Many other communities, they charge you normally triple what you pay for an entire month service for what they call special handling.
Right. And
So
you
for it to be included, that's a benefit.
Well, from our standpoint, we want to negotiate and leverage the best price for our consumers. So the cheaper I can get garbage service for you via contract, that's what I'm going to do. And so right now, you can haul, you can take it to city dump, it's free. Some stuff you can put out by the side. If you live in the city, you can.
No, but it ain't free.
We have vacancies. Well, it's included in your garbage bill,
We
right?
own the home.
Yeah.
If you
Not the
pull,
way it works.
get temporary
Pay
power
taxes.
to work on your house, would that be considered, 4,000 pounds to go dump under that current bill right now?
No.
Well, if.
So you have to
if you
live in the
check
house? Is that the question?
utilities, I mean,
Live
garbage
in
service, if you check garbage service, you know, 'cause for temp.
If you're paying the utilities.
Yes, because you have
Yeah.
that option to choose temp.
That way you're not putting it out on the side of the road, you're taking your little dump trailer out there and dumping it up to 4,000 pounds.
I don't have a problem with that. If we can figure out a way to make that happen.
Say that again? What is he talking about?
I'm saying like, if you got a dump trailer, instead of piling it up out by the road for, it'd be a burden on the city, you could go dump it for free if you have actual power per pull for the, temporary.
Here's the other provision. Construction materials not allowed. If you do a remodel, you can't put any of that out by the side of the road, per ordinance.
Right.
Man, you trying to sell a dump truck, man.
I don't care if you buy one tonight, makes it easy, I mean.
How long are you gonna give us on being Georgia landlord tenant law says we have to, you know, move the stuff out, how long are you gonna give us to dispose of it?
Reasonable amount of time, you know,
A day.
what's reasonable?
A day?
Yeah. By the
But you're
time-
saying it has to be secured though.
If we do an eviction at
If
3.
you leave it and it starts blowing everywhere and it's trash and like people are digging through it,
But
that's
if it's bagged and set out, that's okay.
unless somebody comes over there and digs through it and it's blowing everywhere, then it's not secured.
All right, so you're not saying you're required to get a dumpster to put it in, as long as it's not, like I said, strolling over. If it's bagged and sitting out there, we're okay.
We're good until Taylor comes by and starts digging through it and it goes in. And I probably, people do that, right?
They do. But that is the problem. What happens is they are pretty neat about it and they put it out there and they do put it in bags. But the problem comes when 6, 7 people have passed through there in the last 2 hours and they've ripped all the bags apart and it's all scattered all over the place.
I guess what I'm saying, say we do an eviction at 3 o'clock, and y'all ride by at 5, and we hadn't got everything to the dump. Are you gonna, I mean, if we get to it the next day?
That's fine. No problem at all. So like I said, we're gonna be reasonable, but I'm currently in a situation during an eviction where if it does get rummaged, I'm getting 20 phone calls and having to send public works crews out because y'all did an eviction. Or not y'all, but somebody did an eviction.
4 days later.
What about those clothing containers that pop up overnight?
Clothing?
Yeah, those green containers.
That's where the homeless live.
The donation.
I promise you, that's where the homeless live. Go watch it.
So, thank you.
That's a different meeting.
Yes, thank you.
Because we've gotten rid of a few of them, but these are resellers. These are not charitable organizations. They should come to the city, get a permit, charge them $100 if they want to put one out, have the owner's permit to be there. There's one right now in Rite Aid. I got rid of one. I met the guy, he was emptying it, and I asked him to move it because he didn't have permission to be there. And he did. He said, "Can I move it next week?" I said, "Sure. What's your name?" And so he
I
did.
didn't even know they were doing that.
Oh my gosh, look around. Now that I've brought it to your attention, you're gonna see them popping up everywhere. So the 3 that were behind Ingalls, homeless people were living in them. There were rats, big rat over there, but they got rid of them. Thank you, Mr. Ellington. I don't know if I should call you chief, or do you have a title?
Just Bob.
Bobby. I feel like you should be something or other.
So let's do this. Before you leave, anybody who is interested in an administrative work group to kind of go through this checklist, make sure I got your email or your cell phone number, and we'll shoot out some meeting invites, and we'll take 30 minutes, an hour here or there, and I don't mind working through some of that.
Oasis,
is that list right there?
I'll pretend
I've
like
got a
it's
separate
a legal
sign-in
name,
sheet,
you know?
you can use that.
Yeah, there's
Put
a
sticker
sign-in
on it.
sheet right there.
Oh.
Time to put your email on.
There's one at Piggly Wiggly, there's 2 by Chili's, there's one by McDonald's.
Please don't take away a negative impression. I don't know if the city's ever done this before with property owners. We do want you to be successful, but we do have a goal in trying to clean up. Like I said, not speaking to the choir, but we do have some properties that need some work. Like you to be part of the solution. Like I said, if you'll put your contact number down, I'll make sure that you're involved. And that's for anybody on YouTube that's watching that wants to email Oasis, that wants to be part of, that collaborative effort to review our checklist for utility inspection, and some of the permitting requirements will obviously make time to do that. So my goal would be to move faster rather than slower. So we'll try to get something out by the end of the week and go in and set that up. Any additional questions? I think I made it through all my items. Do y'all have any questions or anything that off topic you want to cover?
As the chief, I would make the comment that what Russell's trying to address, substandard housing, invites crime.
That's right.
We have substandard housing that invites crime. And we've certainly had our fair share of crime uptick.
And I'll say, I lived in Monroe, Louisiana, a lot bigger of a city, and this issue run rampant across that city. Crime was rampant across that city. Thomaston is small enough where we can address this. We can be proactive. We can fix this issue. If we come together, we collaborate, we work together, we use common sense, and we address it. End of the day, our community is in the state it's in because we've allowed it to get in the state. If we want to fix the issues, only we can fix it. No one else.
That VA and Zebulon, they're gonna service almost 80,000 patients a year. That's why we need housing. The houses are going so fast now. The houses over in West Village, Silvertown, are selling for over $100,000. One sold for $138,000. And that's that's what we want. We want to bring it up, you know, and y'all can make a nice profit off that.
It's coming. It's coming. There's a
It's
lot of
coming.
opportunity.
Yeah,
That
taxes,
VA is.
taxes are coming too.
That's okay, you know, if you want to live in a good place, you pay a little more taxes, because that's the influx now. It's people that are coming from California and New York. They're coming in and they're paying cash money for $500,000 houses.
Yeah, when you go to rental, you compete with government housing, that kind of thing too. I mean, it's a balancing act. You know?
It is, and y'all have, you know, when you're in a business and you have, you know, business expenses, and you can write a lot of that stuff off, you know. Homeowners don't get to do a lot of that, but, you know, it is a, I know, I've
But there's a lot
done it
more
too.
expense involved.
Well, you've got a lot more liability, you've got a lot more, you know.
Russell, I would like to make a statement that I was reluctant to even come tonight, you know, with the attitude of what good is it gonna do? You know, they done decided what they're gonna do and all this, but I want to thank y'all, all of you for listening, and I really do think y'all have heard us. I know I've heard y'all, so, and I appreciate that.
You give me a common sense application that keeps me out of legal trouble and promotes health and safety. Will work.
Even with roofing,
No.
Why are you so stuck on roofing? I mean, like, did you have a bad roofing experience?
But don't hold it against us.
I'm not, but it's just firsthand experience of what can happen to somebody who's not familiar.
I'll say to the homeowners.
As long as they're jumping.
No, we do appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Everyone from my perspective, as I mentioned, I've been in a ton of different communities, and one community, it was in a situation where it was a mill town. And I can say after being there many years, it never once had the involvement of individuals like yourselves coming to a meeting like this, to where now some of those communities, they have demolished a ton of houses, but now they are facing a stark housing crisis just because they don't have them available. They're vacant lots. So I appreciate it, makes my job a lot easier when you are involved to come and talk to us, because we don't want to get to that state. We want to preempt that. And obviously that's not only better for us, it's better for the taxpayers, it's better for y'all too. But I appreciate y'all coming, because the housing crisis is, in my opinion, it is real. And a lot of times when you have absentee landowners, that's when it exacerbates that problem. So I appreciate y'all coming here and maintaining the property that you do in that state, so we can avoid that.
In other business, I'm going to have another meeting, different topic. This administrative town hall talking just like this. It's going to be on September 21st at 5:15. City Council adopted a new alcohol ordinance last night. So anybody who currently holds an alcohol license or is interested in holding an alcohol license, we would invite you to come please participate. I know that's not the whole truth, but
Just a quick question, are these Tyler or Taylor?
Taylor.
Taylor, you might probably can answer this. We talked about housing, but do these same rules apply to the buildings downtown?
Yes.
Because there's a lot of buildings that trees are growing in there, so I was just, or
Right. So and let me make a comment that I didn't make earlier. Aesthetic and code violation don't necessarily overlap, right? So something can be ugly, but it's not necessarily structurally unfit or unsafe. You know, I saw the tree growing out of the building, and I've been trying to find a code violation, because, you know, it's kind of weird, trees growing outside of the building. You know, paint color. You know, we always get questions. It's coming out of a building. It's just one tree. I mean, I don't know. It's a thing. It's a thing. We may write a law just for the tree. I don't know. You know, paint color is one that we always get. Why can't the city regulate paint color? There's actually an opinion from the Attorney General. You know, we don't regulate paint color just because you don't like McDonald's yellow, you know, McDonald's loves it. So, you know, we don't regulate paint color.
But Russell, we can, if we're giving grant money in a facade grant, we can say.
If it's our money,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
If it's our money, then we can. And we do have a facade grant program for the DDA. If anybody's within the DDA and you're
Have you
interested.
got the Secretary of the Interior standards?
Give me the money for the paint.
For what?
it might speak to, I'll look into it.
Even through HPC, there's an opinion from the Attorney General that you cannot regulate color,
Uh-oh, we're in trouble.
isn't there? He didn't
Only,
believe me either.
only if it's through the facade grant and we are incentivizing you to paint your building, we can provide a suggested color palette that you are to choose from. And, you know, we are discussing that for some of the buildings downtown to create some kind of synergy. You know,
if it's our money, our rules, right?
Right,
And we're compelling, or it's not ours, it's taxpayers' money that the city's appropriating for economic development, and we're running all that through HPC. So there are some caveats if it's a grant type situation, but if it's your money, you know, paint's not an issue. Sometimes I get calls on code violation, and it's, you know, it doesn't look great, but it's structurally sound. There's not a health and safety issue. You know, sometimes beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So we're looking for health and safety or clear-cut code violations, and we have enough of those to keep us busy. So I won't keep talking. If y'all don't have any additional questions, yes, sir.
I got a question. If maybe in the future, if you try to upgrade a property or make your property better, make a city look better, is there anything city can help them? Help them?
your property, your commercial property is within the DDA district. You can apply for a facade grant, and we will match up to $5,000 of any kind of exterior improvements to your building. You want to paint your building?
If you're spending over $1 million on the property, what
So I mean, there's tons of opportunities for state funding, federal funding. There's tons of grants that we can apply for. I mean,
as far as city goes, like if there any big industry come to your city, they always come and talk to you. If they're going to say we're going to hire 500 employees or 700
if it's tied to job creation or substantial investment,
it might not be a job creation, but it will be to where now it looks trashy and it's going to be.
They always tie it to job creation. We run that through the IDA, and they will consider inducements for commercial property.
And of course, it's going to be an extra job than right now, but it's not going to be where you can actually address it where it's going to be a 500 people or 600 people. It might be hire an extra 10 people. I don't know if that matters or not.
Could qualify, and they try to balance that based on the investment. Some cities, what I've seen them do is it's not necessarily a tax allocation district. I forget what they call it, but if you make X amount of improvement to your structure, they'll freeze the valuation of your property value for a period of time. Meaning if your property is valued at X, your improvement brings it here. They'll cap the value of that improvement for a prorated, so it'd be like 0% for 5 years, and then they tier it in over 10. So there's some creative things that can be done. And look, we've put a lot of emphasis on downtown revitalization. We spent money on a master plan. If you watch the meeting, next meeting, we're going to have a presentation from WLA Studios. We've applied for rural zone designation, which is, you know, makes us eligible for state tax incentives for job creation, rehab, property acquisition. We've redone our alcohol ordinance. We're creating an entertainment district from downtown. We're actually creating some bar licenses. We're reducing the distancing requirement for pouring license for restaurants downtown due to proximity to churches. We're moving some things around to try to reinvigorate the downtown development process, and that will spill over outside the DDA, but as the center point of the city, that's been the starting point of our focus. So we've got some things going.
Russell, I got one question for you if you'll kind of clear this up for me. What's the code for a record service, a collision shop, and a mechanic shop as far as vehicles being at your location?
Obviously, if they're coming to you, they're probably going to be inoperable.
No.
Because they're wrecked.
No. I'm speaking on behalf of these guys here too.
No, I get it, because when I
They're
read
gonna call
it,
somebody to come get this abandoned vehicle. Guess who it's going to be? It's going to be one record service.
right? And I think we have to have some sort of reasonable timestamp. Obviously, it can't sit there in perpetuity, right?
What's the code on that? I have a business license for a tow service in the city. have a business license for a body shop, and have a business license also for a mechanic shop.
So
Have three different buildings.
I think that discretion would fall to the officer, because the way the current ordinance reads on abandoned, it's gotta have valid tag, insurance, it's gotta be inoperable. Obviously, if it's in a mechanic, it's inoperable.
No, I'm
That's why
talking
they-
about tow. I'm
Or-
talking back to the abandoned vehicles that we pick up at the shop with the record service. We
Well,
have
my
to-
understanding is you can file for title on that vehicle once you've had it in your possession for so long.
If
And
it's
then
a-
once you file for that title, then you can dispose of the vehicle.
Yeah, it's gonna cost you $280 to file for a title for a $200 vehicle. You're
So-
losing money.
So
Does the city have somewhere where I can take these abandoned vehicles?
No, but the question is gonna be, what's a reasonable amount of time? Because we can't infinitely just have cars pile up.
Okay, I give you an instance. I had a car up there, I kept it for a year and a half. Bobby come up there, give me a sticker to put on it, like the little sticker you was talking about. Okay? I disposed of the car. Took it to a salvage yard. Guess what? 3 weeks later, this customer comes up here wanting to know where his car is. Or not the customer, but the guy that abandoned this vehicle that the city called me to come pick up. So now he's up there cussing in my office, raising Cain because I disposed of his car. You know what I told him to do? I told him to call Bobby.
Are you telling him to call me? And I think it goes back to the reasonable time, and as long as we apply that equally in terms of precedent, right? Then I think we're justified in doing what we do.
And then we have one officer, since we're getting on this officer, that him and my father, which owns the business, had a few words. He comes and tells the code enforcement officer to write my dad a ticket for a vehicle that's on 35 acres of land, that's not out of code. You can't see it from the road. It's not out of code, but your officer called and told him to write a ticket. And ever since then,
It is out of code. It's an abandoned vehicle.
it's not abandoned. It has
It's
been.
out of code. I know the vehicle you're referring to is absolutely out of code. And what he did was absolutely right, and it was an accessible service line that you can go down, and the vehicle did not have the proper registration things that's required by code, and it was on property in the city.
That belongs to me.
In the city, and there's city codes. That vehicle was absolutely 100% in violation of city code, and he did right.
Okay, so we didn't get a citation for it. We moved the vehicle, of course. But ever since then, it's every day. Somebody's down there complaining about a vehicle I got sitting in a fence or something. I mean, if we're gonna do this code enforcement to one person, let's do it to everybody.
Agreed.
Let's do it to everybody. There's a building right across the road from my shop that's got a hole in it. You could throw 3 cars through it. Nobody said not one word to this guy because he come to Thomaston and spent millions of dollars buying property, commercial property on the square. Nobody's addressed that. But if we're gonna bother one person, let's get out of them.
I agree.
And especially the ones that don't spend money in the city buying business license.
I agree. I got a horsepower problem right now, but I'm working on that. But I agree. Everybody who's in violation with property maintenance, I agree.
I mean, let's get them all.
But you can only get them so many at a time, and you are not the only person who's gotten those citations. I can assure you that.
I haven't got a citation.
Well, who you're referring to.
Okay.
There's far more in the city that have gotten those citations. They're just,
Well, if we could end on a happy note.
I mean, that's fine.
And feel
All I'm
free.
saying is let's don't pick and choose, like you were saying.
I'm not.
earlier.
And you can ask Bobby, do I pick and choose? No. We're rolling. Georgia did beat Clemson. I like to make sure we get that on the minutes. If you want to hang around, if you've got questions you didn't want to say in front of the group, I'll hang tight here for a minute. We do appreciate you coming. If you want to be involved in our group on the inspections, make sure we got your email so I can shoot you a invite. Pat, you know I got you.
Okay.
I didn't know you knew some more about
Did you already sign? Did you already sign? You want to be? Okay. Then just put your email out to the side. Yeah, just put your email out to the side
Yes, it is.